hand, but only after she was beaten by Joffrey Baratheon. Lord Tyrion took her to make sure she was safe. Garland said, "There will be no peace if my sister is not returned unharmed." Robb said. Adam Marbrand glared at Baelish. "I have known Tyrion for a long time, since he was a boy. He is no monster who would harm young girls. And he cares very much for his brother. If you return Sir Jaime, he will release Sansa Stark." Robb nodded. "We need to speak as well about the Riverlands. There will be no retribution for the Rivermen. No hostages, no stripping of lands. House Tully will remain as the Lord Paramount of the Trident. The Crown will not assess taxes or call the banners for the Riverlands for the next 5 years. His Grace will not agree. House Tully has sworn fealty to House Baratheon. The duties to their liege lord must be honored. A bannerman cannot ignore his vow." Baelish argued. "The Iron Throne swore to protect the Riverlands. Every field has been burnt, every town sacked, every village pillaged, every castle sieged south of the Blue Fork. The Iron Throne broke their oath to House Tully." Jon said. "It will take years for the Riverlords to restore their strength. And the small folk have suffered enough from floods, looters, fire and war. Taxing the starving will not help." Robb said. Randall Tarly interrupted. "We do not need their men. The Tyrell army is more than large enough to protect the Iron Throne. The Reach is stronger than both the North and the Riverlands." "Words are wind, Lord Tarly. But I doubt the Lannister army wants the swords of the Rivermen at their backs. The North is not the only place that remembers." Robb said. "House Tyrell has no objection. My sister will be queen for a long time. 5 years passes quick enough. But Lord Stark, what of the North? What of your relation to the throne?" Garland said. Robb exchanged looks with Jon. "Joffrey is a cunt. But so long as Sansa is returned, and the Riverlands are at peace, we will live with that. We are not likely to send gifts to the wedding, and if His Grace calls the banners, the North may take a long time to answer." Garland Tyrell smiled. "That is more than reasonable. So long as the North is part of the Seven Kingdoms, my sister will be pleased. Once Stannis is brought to heel, the Seven Kingdoms will have no need for large armies. What if the Iron Throne wishes you to come to King's Landing? To bend the knee?" Baelish asked. "I marched south with 16,000 men. Next time, I will come with more. If Joffrey wants to open the gates to 25,000 Northmen, he can." Robb said. "We have 10,000 men at King's Landing. And 30,000 more at Tumbleton, Lord Stark. The Reach does not fear the North." Tarly harumphed. Garland shook his head. "There is no need for this. Highgarden does not want war. As you say, the Riverlands have suffered enough. My sister wishes to be queen over the Seven Kingdoms. We have no quarrel with the Starks. And the North has none with the Tyrells." Robb said. There was relief on the faces of the Riverlords. Her mother congratulated Lord Ed Muir, and the Northmen made plans to return home. Robb shook Garland's hand, and Maester Muir prepared a raven. Baelish smirked, Tarly grunted, and Marbrand inquired about the Lannister prisoners. Only Arya noticed her brother Jon slipping quietly away. Jon climbed down to the stern of the rowboat and ghost leaped into the bow. With Chet and the Wintertown boys as crew, Maturin Mandaily captained the riverboat from Harrentown to the Isle of Faces. The water was surprisingly warm, and the surface rippled blue and green in the fading light of the sun. The God's Eye was enormous, 100 miles in every direction, and it took several hours to cross south to the island. As he rowed closer, Jon could see the groves of weirwood trees staring out over the waters. 10,000 years ago, the first men and the children of the forest had fought a great war lasting centuries. On the Isle of Faces, the Green Seers and the leaders of the first men met to sign a pact where the chieftains swore to stop cutting down weirwoods and leave the great forests to the children. In return, the first men would settle the open lands, coastland, high plains, bright meadows, moors, swamps, and mountains. Over time, the pact was broken, but the Northmen claimed that was the fault of the Andal invaders, and the first men and the children had been friends for 4,000 years. Jon doubted the tale. All men were greedy and the children greatly diminished by war. The stories were from too long ago, and so much was forgotten and much more had never been known. He regretted the loss. All the trees on the isle were carved with stern and sad faces, red eyes like the 5-pointed leaves of the weirwood trees. John knew the blood red came from the sap, but here on this remote island, the trees seemed so alive and present. The wind sighed and the leaves rustled, and he could feel eyes watching him, 1,000 red eyes on bone-white faces. Shapes flitted about in the shadows, graceful and quick. When John was a boy, Ned Stark had spent many nights speaking of the age of heroes and the children of the forest. They were here, John thought, the children, in the Isle of Faces, singing their songs of the earth, living in villages hidden among the trees. Had they all died? Adam Valerian, dragon rider and bastard, had visited the Isle of Faces before falling bravely at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, fighting Tessarion and Vermitha. Had the children sang to him of his fate? This was a sacred place, and John bowed to the dragons that had come here before him. Ghost sniffed the air and headed deeper into the isle. John followed. He had walked 4 hours when Ghost stopped at a grove. 13 giant weirwoods stood, tall and dark, their faces turned inward. He saw the silhouette under the moonlit shadows of the trees, tall and lean, with long flowing hair so silver it was nearly white, in plate armor with a gold cloak. The man turned, and John noticed the tabard first, a bright red 3-headed dragon on a field of red and black. Dark Sister hung at his side, but it was the face that revealed his identity, a face handsome as any prince but fiercer and more deadly than any man John had ever met. White hair, cruel eyes, an uneasy smile, prone to both mirth and rage. Demon Targaryen. How are you here? John asked in surprise. I died 150 years ago. Do you think this is real? Time does not flow in a straight line for weirwood trees or at the Isle of Faces. You know my tale. I died here, above the god's eye. Demon said. But why are you here, your grace? John said. He laughed. You of all people do not have to give me a title. You are named after me. Your true name is Demon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar. 10 generations separate us, but you are more like me than any of my children's children. Demon Targaryen was the hero and villain of the bloodiest war in the history of Westeros, the Dance of the Dragons. There were 4 conflicting accounts of the civil war between the Targaryens written by 2 maesters, a septon, and a lecherous dwarf, but they all agreed on how the dance began. Demon was the uncle and husband of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. Her half-brother, Aegon II, with a conniving small council, conspired to cheat the rightful heir out of her crown. Aegon the Grasping had the wealth of Old Town, Lannisport and King's Landing, the support of House Hightower, the Lannisters, and the Baratheons, the sword Blackfyr, and he sat on the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra had Dragonstone and Demon. Prince Demon died at the God's Eye, killing Aemond and Vigor, but his death and his actions in the dance hurt Aegon and the Greens immensely. Like the sigil of the 3-headed dragon, Demon served fire and blood to his foes. And after the dance, his son, Aegon III, sat on the Iron Throne. It was an unhappy reign. Demon was a skilled warrior, a crafty general, and an expert dragon rider. He was also a kinslayer, ambitious, reckless, immoral, easy to anger, and eager for revenge. When his stepson was murdered at Shipbreaker Bay by Aemond, Demon had orchestrated the murder of Aegon's oldest son. An eye for an eye, a son for a son. Prince Jaehaerys was only 6 years old when he was butchered in front of his mother Helena. Even Maegor the Cruel had never slain kin that young. How are we alike? I have not committed your crimes. John said. The rogue prince scoffed. Names have power. You wanted to be a Stark, but your uncle hid you as a Snow. But that was a lie too. You are Demon Targaryen and you are my true heir. But how? How did I get your name? John said. Your father, Rhaegar, was many things, good and bad, but not an original thinker. He wanted the same names as the conquest, Aegon, Rhaenys and Visenya. You were the 3rd head of the dragon. I was supposed to be a girl. John asked in shock. Prince Demon chuckled. Thankfully not. Your mother, Lyanna Stark, the she-wolf, was more than a match for your father. She named you after me. And so it goes. You will be the terror of your age, like the daemons before you. Before me. But you said I was your heir. John said. You are the third demon. You have met the second, Demon Waters, the Black Dragon. He was a dragon, just like you. Demon Blackfear nearly destroyed the kingdom. John said, thinking of the 12-year-old boy he met in his dream. He never should have been a Waters. His father and mother were both dragons. Aegon the Unworthy was a fool. Demon Blackfear should have always been a Targaryen. The first demon had bathed the 7 kingdoms in blood to defend his niece-wife's claim. The second demon rose up in rebellion and nearly won at Redgrass Field. And now he was the third. The third head of a dragon, carrying Demon's name and Rhaegar's hopes. John would have laughed, if the whole thing had not felt like a curse. Your grandfather was a king. Your father should have been king. Your brother was a king. And your sons will be kings. But you will not be a king. That was my fate. That will be yours as well. Demon said. Robb is not a king. John objected. Only because you pointed out that being king of the North and the Trident would be an error. The Starks need allies. I fought against Old Town, the Stormlands and the Westermen. You have many battles ahead, and you will be outnumbered. Demon said. I am not like you, Prince Demon. I won't slay my kin, or order children killed. And what do you think Aegon II would have done to my wife and children? He fed his half-sister to his dragon. He and Aemond conspired to kill his aunt Rhaenys, who would have been a better ruler than all of us. What will you do when your enemies hunt your family down? When the Lannisters and their allies take your pack and skin the wolves alive? Demon said. That won't happen. I won't let it. John said. You will do what I did, Demon, third of my name. You will serve them fire and blood. Aemond the Kinslayer killed thousands when he burned the Riverlands. For 13 days, I waited for him at Harrenhal, with only Caraxes at my side. The dance ended a year later, but Vigor's death doomed Aegon the Usurper. The Heart Tree at Harrenhal. You carved those marks on the weirwood when you waited for Aemond and Vigor. John said. I did. There is magic in weirwood trees and in blood. I knew I would die to defeat Vigor. Aemond was a cruel, hateful boy. There are many of those in this world. The dragon was the true threat. Killing a fully grown dragon is not easy. Vigor was twice as large as Caraxes. Was there no other way? John asked. Demon shook his head, a bitter smile on his proud face. Blood will have blood. That was true when Valyria was young. You are a dragon. Do not forget that. Do not bow to lesser men. John dreamt under the cover of the weirwood trees in the Isle of Faces. He walked past the ironwood door into the chilly and dark crypt. This was the Hall of the Dead, where 8,000 years of Starks were buried, stone kings on stone thrones. He heard drums, faint horns, and the sound of feasting behind the cavernous walls. He came upon the dire wolf, grey and ghastly, fur spotted with blood, golden eyes shining sadly in the dark. The wolf howled mournfully in the dream. Then the darkness became total, and he saw a blind girl, sleeping in a rag-stuffed mattress on a shelf of cold stone. There was a pool 10 feet across and the room was full of statues, a weeping woman, a lion-headed man on a throne, a pale child with a sword, a hooded man with a staff. All the statues were carved out of black ebony or white weirwood. The blind girl's face was still as water as she ate sardines fried in fragrant pepper oil, the 5-foot wooden stick and beggar bowl at her side. Then he saw a tall graceful girl with lovely blue eyes and thick auburn hair. The maiden was at a feast with purple serpents in her hair, venom dripping into the dark wine. The girl was whisked away to a castle built of snow held captive by a small man who pretended to be a giant. A wolf child cried for home, and wondered why his meat was raw and not apple cakes or honey. An older boy stood in front of a skeletal old man with one red eye in rotted black rags trapped by tangled weirwood roots on a twisted throne. Brynden Rivers smirked, and John knew Bloodraven had seen him. John gasped for air. He knew the faces of course, an older Arya, a graceful Sansa, and a tearful Rickon. He saw only the back of the last boy. The wolf was Greywind and John vowed that he would rain bloody vengeance on anyone who harmed the dire wolf of Robb. Your sight is strong, young one. The speaker, only a few feet tall, had nut brown skin dappled like a deer. The eyes, huge, liquid gold and green and slitted like a cat, matched the large ears, studded with green stones. The voice was high and sweet but also sad. You are a child of the forest. John was not certain if it was a dream or reality. The speaker nodded. Most green seers need weirwood paste to experience visions. But on the Isle of Faces, it is easier to see. Do you have a name? John asked. Leaf. I am the only one left who speaks the common tongue of Westeros. Are these visions real? Will they come true? John asked. Who can say? The green seers saw visions of things that had not happened but came to pass. Or perhaps your dreams are a warning. You saw your cousins scattered and broken. Mayhap, you can stop that, or your dreams will come true in this world and others. Leaf said. That is not very helpful. John said. Our green seers saw that the children of the forest would fade away and dwindle over time. Like the giants, shadow cats, and mammoths. Even the time of the dire wolves will pass. And one day, dragons will be only a fantasy for children. They saw this 8,000 years ago, in the long night, and our doom has finally come. Leaf said. I am sorry. I am sorry that the first men and the Andals violated the pact, and for the loss of your people. John said. Leaf spoke in a weary tone. What will be, will be. There is no room for us in this world of men, demon, son of Roger. But I have a gift for you. The three-eyed crow sent me from a cave near the land of always winter. What do you know about my people? No one knew much about the children of the forest. They had no books, no parchment, or written language. Ancient scrolls, that predated the citadel, said the children could create music so beautiful that it would bring tears to whoever heard it. I know little. The children of the forest lived in Westeros long before the first men. I know you hunted with weirwood bows and obsidian arrows and knives. You carved faces on weirwoods to keep watch over the land. And the children could use powerful magic. John said. Not all the children, but our wise men were strong in magic. The green seers could send beasts against their enemies and turn trees to warriors. But dragons have magic too. Before the doom, the dragon lords were great in sorcery, in fire and air. But there is another magic, different from that of ancient Valyria, water magic. Leaf said. John knew about the Hammer of the Waters, a story that dated back 12,000 years. The first time, the hammer shattered the arm of dawn, creating the stepstones. The second time, the children tried to break Westeros into two, and created the neck to separate the north from the other kingdoms. The Maesters claimed that the hammer was not dark magic, but rather the melting of once frozen lands. Both attempts failed to halt the spread of men, and the children dwindled away. John wondered if the Rhoynar and the children shared the same magic. Water magic has not been used for 1,000 years, not since the Valyrians drove the Rhoynar into exile from Essos. And I may be a Targaryen, but even the greatest Targaryens are not the equal of the ancient dragon lords. John said. You have the spark, Jon Snow, but the fire has not yet been lit. You are at the center of the God's Eye, and this is the Isle of Faces. This is the last bastion of magic in Westeros for both good and evil. Remember. Use the water against your enemies. Leaf said before she disappeared into the leaves of the trees above. John groaned. He traveled to the Isle with the hope of finding some trace of his parents or a memento of his mother. From Bloodraven's hints, he guessed they had visited the Isle of Faces. Instead, he was confused by dreams and prophecies. Demon Targaryen was a riddle wrapped up in a mystery. If John did not find the key, House Stark would bleed. He fell into a deep slumber and dreamt of a dark-haired maiden crowned with blue winter roses. She looked like Arya Stark. Arya Stark stabbed her knife at the beets floating in the wooden bowl. The meal was poor, a thin gruel of cabbage, beets and parsnips, boiled fish, and a mound of mashed turnips. The river fish had been boiled in wine and vinegar to form a transparent jelly, a wiggling blob of pale white flesh. Arya thought that the dish looked disgusting. She was not alone. Lady Shellowent asked to host a grander feast for the envoys from the Iron Throne, but Robb had denied the request. Her brother wanted the messengers to return to King's Landing, but the rivermen were anxious to speak with the Reach Lords. Even little Limandiari, so virulently opposed to the Lannisters, hung on every word from Sir Garland. Arya snorted in disgust. You cannot blame them, child, a calm Lady Ravla Smallwood said. In the absence of Jon, Arya was forced to sit with the ladies, and not her brothers. The Tyrells will wield great influence in the capital. They won the Game of Thrones. But they didn't do anything. They didn't fight. They didn't bleed. Arya hissed. And they are smarter for it. Isn't that better than seeing your lands burned? And your small folk dying of hunger? Ravla said. I am sorry, my lady. Arya said. Acorn Hall had been attacked by foragers a few moons ago. Lady Ravla barred the gates of the small castle, only opening when a raven from Wayfarer's Rest brought news that Riverrun had been freed. You didn't start the war, child. I am grateful to Lord Stark for ending the fighting. When the madness began, I sent my daughter Carolyn to my great-aunt in Old Town. I will be happy to have her return safe. Lady Smallwood said. Arya was not certain if the war was over. Sir Garland may have been amiable, but Randil Tarly was not a man who cared for peace. The Lord of Hornhill stared at his soup and glared at the other lords. Tarly's thin lips curled up in a thin sneer as the Smalljan recounted loudly his bold deeds at the Red Fork to Sir Adam Marbrand's disgust. You are to be congratulated for your great victories, Lord Stark. No doubt the minstrels will sing of the northern wolves battling on the Trident. Lord Baelish smirked. Minstrels. You think I am fighting this war so they will sing songs about me? Robb said. Certainly not, but the tales of your feats in battle have spread far and wide. Baelish said. Robb looked hard at Littlefinger. I came south to rescue my father and my sisters. My father was killed as a traitor. The North will not forget that. There is no shame to bending the knee, Lord Stark. Balon Greyjoy bent the knee after his failed rebellion. Torrhen Stark bent the knee rather than face 3 dragons. Baelish said. The Iron Throne has no dragons. Robb said. They have the reach. We have 50,000 swords, spears, maces. We have more men than the Lannister and Stark armies combined. Randil Tarly said. Pray forgive me, my lords. I wish for some fresh air. Robb walked from the great hall. He motioned for his battle guard to remain. Sir Garland stood up and followed. After the departure of the Tyrell Knight, Arya slipped quietly away. Arya found her brother at the Tower of Dread, looking over the Great Lake to the south. She hid in the shadows with Grey Wind as Sir Garland spoke to her brother. I am sorry for that. Lord Tarly is not known for his diplomacy. Lord Baelish is, but I confess, I find the man rather sly. Garland said. I do not trust Baelish at all. Neither does my brother Jon. We will be happier when Sansa is safe in our hands, and away from the rats in King's Landing. Robb said. Yes, about that. Sir Garland cleared his throat. When House Tyrell bargained with the Iron Throne, my grandmother insisted on the Lady Sansa to be delivered into our hands. She would not agree to Margaery's betrothal without that. And why is that, sir? Lady Olenna has never met my sister. Robb said. We hoped for an alliance between House Stark and the Reach. My older brother, Willers, is unmarried and the heir of Highgarden. Garland said. I will not have Sansa freed only for her to be tracked in courtly games. If she becomes Sansa Tyrell, Joffrey would be her good brother. She will not be tormented any longer. Robb said. Willers has a good head and heart. And Highgarden is 700 miles away from King's Landing. With my father as hand, a Tyrell has to remain in the Reach. And even with our armies on the march, we have 5,000 swords and many knights still at Highgarden. Your sister will not be mistreated. Garland said. And what do the Lannisters say about this? Robb said. They do not know. We would announce it only after Margaery and Joffrey are wedded. Your sister would be long gone from King's Landing by then. Garland said. House Stark will consider the proposal, sir. But only if my sister Sansa agrees. I will not force her into a match. And Sansa will come with us to Winterfell first to see the bones of my father placed in the crypt with his ancestors. Robb said. My brother would like to send messages by Raven. Is that acceptable, Lord Stark? Garland said. Robb. If we are to be good brothers, you can call me Robb. And yes, the happiness of my sister is important to me, sir. When she is exchanged for Sir Jaime Lannister, I will tell her of the proposal from Willers. Her brother said. Arya left before Robb and Sir Gullen shook hands. She was making her way back to the hall when she heard two voices, one familiar and the other not. She ducked back into a nook as they came closer. I am sorry to say, Cat, that I do not trust the imp at all. Littlefinger's oily voice whispered. Surely, he will do no harm to Sansa. The Marbrand Knight said that Tyrion values his brother's life and he attempted to rescue Sir Jaime from Riverrun. Her lady mother said. Sir Adam is a valiant knight and true, but none, I think, have ever accused him of cunning. The Westerland's men are easily led about their noses. Lord Tywin values Jaime's life. He has been trying to get his oldest son released from the Kingsguard for years. If Jaime dies, Tyrion would be the undisputed heir. I would not rely on the dwarf's mercy. Baelish said. Does he truly wish his brother's death? Catelyn said. Dwarfs are treacherous creatures, cruel and lustful, and no better than bastards. I have heard disturbing stories about the imp. Tyrion Lannister was married before. He grew bored of his wife, and he made a gift of her to his father's guards. 100 of them in one afternoon, while he watched. He may do the same with Sansa, after he is done using her. Baelish said. Lady Catelyn blanched. But surely Lord Tywin would not permit that. Lord Tywin knew. This was at Casterly Rock. He was disgusted with Tyrion for his lustful ways. No doubt that is why he desires Sir Jaime's return. Sir Jaime is the key to Sansa's return. If he is harmed in any way, I doubt anyone can save Sansa from the imp's lechery. The Iron Throne will trade Sansa for Jaime, but the imp may not allow it. Petter said. And what can be done to ensure the exchange? Catelyn said. Nymeria bristled at her side. Arya put her arms around her neck to calm down the dire wolf. She heard nothing more as Baelish and her mother retreated further into the gathering darkness. Jon woke to the light of stars on the god's eye. A comet burned red in the night sky, the color of blood and flame and sunsets. The long tail outshone the silvery moon. Small folk believed a comet was an omen of droughts and war, but for the Riverlands, that had already come. At the Citadel, the current Archmaester of Astronomy claimed the comet was a star falling to the earth. The man was a fool, Jon thought, who pontificated without reason. Ancient records proved that comets were seen in the same position regardless of where the observer was in Essos or Westeros. Thus, the comet must be far away, certainly beyond the clouds and storms. Possibly beyond even the moon, Jon thought. The comet heralds the return of the dragons. Blood and fire. Daemon Targaryen said. Jon snorted. I am sure in King's Landing, the Grand Maester claims it is King Joffrey's comet, to announce the start of his glorious reign. The faith will declare it a messenger of the Seven, bringing judgment from the Father. And the priests in Essos will say the comet means the return of their gods too, whether that is the Lord of Light or the Black Goat of Qohor. You are not a religious man. But you must know that comets do not burn so bright or so blood red. It is the color of our house, Demon, the three-headed dragon. Jon knew that. Even beyond Bloodraven, he had dreams of the Dragon Lords and a ruined city with topless towers buried in ash. He was the blood of ancient Valyria, a product of the Doom. He was the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. Do not call me Demon. It would be far too confusing if I called you Demon and you said the same to me. Daemon Targaryen chuckled. Very well. What do your dreams tell you? That my mother gave me the name Demon before she died. That my destiny does not lie north. Another dragon is alive, Rhaegar's sister Daenerys. They say her brother Viserys was killed but that she rules a Khalasar of Dothraki. Jon said. Horse lords. Daemon spat. They may be clever with horses but they are fools about everything else. They cannot make anything, or rule, or even live in cities. Daenerys Stormborn does not know how to rule. She needs your aid. Jon rolled his eyes. Daemon Targaryen had failed as king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea. After 5 pitiful years, he simply moved to Driftmark, abandoning the Isles to pirates and rogues. I will leave in the morning. I have to return to Harrenhal, and help my brother Rob make certain the Iron Throne will keep their promises. They will not. You were not made for peace. You are meant to fight, to kill, to lead men in war. To struggle against great odds. You are a conqueror, like Daeron the young dragon. Daeron Targaryen died young, as did his conquest. He was 16 when he wrote his book. He died 2 years later, and lost the crown of Aegon I in Dorne. Jon said. He did not mention that Daeron was slain by treachery under a peace banner. You will die too. Are you afraid of death? Daemon asked. Death will come when it comes. You did not fear Aemond and Vigor. Why should I be afraid of false stags and lions? Jon said. Then I will tell you something. The God's Eye is more than a lake and the home of the Isle of Faces. This place has power for our house. 3 times, dragons have fought near the God's Eye. The first time, Aegon burnt down Harrenhal with Balerion. The second time, Aegon the Uncrowned, son of Innis, was slain by Maegor the Cruel. The third time, I drove Dark Sister through Aemond Kinslayer's left eye. The magic here will defeat your enemies. Daemon said. Targaryens have won and lost here. 3 dragons died over this lake. You died, as did Caraxes. How good could this magic be? Jon said. You will die here, Daemon Targaryen. But you will not lose at the God's Eye. Victory will be yours even if you fall. When I killed Vigor, Aegon the usurper was doomed. Yours is the song of ice and fire and you will win the great war, he said. Why must you speak in riddles? Why can't prophecies be easy to understand? Jon asked. Then it would not be prophecy. Remember, the God's Eye. You will die here, but you will win. And Daemon Targaryen, the wonder and terror of his time, hero and monster, faded away, leaving a bemused Jon Snow behind. Author's notes. The weirwood tree at Harrenhal is mentioned briefly in Arya's chapters and also in Fire and Blood, the history of the Targaryens. The history is good, but certainly not as interesting or vivid as the Game of Thrones, and worst, it delayed the winds of winter. Rain is a theme in Duncan and Egg. Bloodraven is blamed for a terrible drought in the second book, The Sworn Sword. It causes a conflict between Sir Osgry and Lady Webber, that embroils Sir Duncan and Egg. At the end of The Sworn Sword, the rains return. The King of the Trident is also known as the King of the Rivers. House Hoare, rulers of the Iron Islands, conquered the Riverlands but held it only for 3 generations, ending in Harren the Black. House Mud ruled the Trident, but their last great king, Tristaifer IV, won 99 battles but lost the 100th against the Andal invaders. House Justman and House Teague also reigned, but eventually the Riverlands became a war zone between the Storm King and the Ironborn. The words about Robert Baratheon are borrowed from Jon Snow's thoughts when he met the king at Winterfell. It is interesting that everyone in House Stark was good at judging people, except for Sansa. For the first couple books, her judgment is horrendous, but somehow, she transforms from clueless to the great manipulator. Beric Dondarrion's betrothed is Lady Illyria Dane, the younger sister of Sir Arthur and Lady Ashura. She is Edric Dane's aunt. In the book, Beric gives that speech at the Hollow Hill. "One day at a time" is a quote from The Wire. Omar Little is asked how he survives 8 years of robbing drug dealers. He says, "Day at a time, I suppose." It is also a lens on how Jon thinks. Readers have asked what his big plans are. He is focused on the immediate steps to ensure House Stark wins. The scene with Tyrion greeting the Tyrells mirrors when Oberyn Martell arrives at King's Landing after the Battle of Blackwater. GRM spends an entire chapter on this, describing 8 great Dornish houses, none of which are ever mentioned again, and lots of expensive clothes and nice horses. I thought Bronn would naturally say hurry it up. At that stage in the books and show, Tyrion has gotten demoted to Master of Coin. Here, he is still Hand of the King, but given they had to trade that to the Tyrells, he has already lost influence. And more importantly, so has Tywine. People might say Tywine should be feared still, but losing battles has consequences. He sends Joffrey to bed after the Red Wedding and the Lannister army is in King's Landing. Tywine holds all the cards then, Stannis is beaten at Blackwater, Robb Stark is dead. Tywine Lannister's hands are clean, he just uses other people to commit his crimes. It is interesting the contrast between him and Roose Bolton. Blood will have blood is a quote by Macbeth. It is commonly used to mean that a violent action will cause another. The actual use in the play is a bit different. Macbeth admits that he has used murder to gain power. He realizes that others may murder him to do the same. The blood of the murder victim will seek out the blood of the murderer, so one bloody crime will be avenged with another. Which, if you think about it, when Demon orders the murder of a 6-year-old son, it shocks the royal family in King's Landing, but it really shouldn't. The ghastly grey wolf is from a dream Jon Snow has, right before Mance Rayder's army attacks the wall. It is one of the most absurd battle scenes, the notion that 100 poorly trained recruits can turn back an army of 100,000. And then you realize the wall is 700 feet high, and you wonder what idiot thought a wall that size could be stormed. The other shots are Arya as a blind girl in the House of White and Black, Weirwood and Ebony, Sansa at the Purple Wedding and the Uri, Rickon fleeing from Winterfell, and Bran meeting the Three-Eyed Raven. Personally, I think the cave paintings at Dragonstone are a moronic plot device, and cheating as plot exposition. It is a terrible date and an absurd deus ex machina, so Jon can babble about how everyone needs to join hands. He conveniently forgets that Cersei and Euron are not going to sing Cumbaya. But then again, I don't see why Bran is the only one in the TV show who is supposed to have magical inklings of the future when in the books, Daenerys's dreams are very well written, and more prophetic. That's why Leaf appear directly to Jon. You can decide whether it is a vision or if the children can shadow walk to the Isle of Faces. Daemon Targaryen was a riddle wrapped up in a mystery. The actual quote is from Winston Churchill when he talks about Russia in 1939. He says, "I cannot forecast to you the action of Russia. It is a riddle, wrapped up in a mystery, inside an enigma." In the books, the Tyrells try and fail to get Sansa to Highgarden for a betrothal with Willers. You can interpret that plot as mercenary. Theon is believed to have killed Bran and Rickon, so Sansa is heir to Winterfell. There is no doubt the Tyrells know that, but Willers would almost certainly stay south in Highgarden. I imagine had the plot worked, the Tyrells would send one of Sansa's children to claim the north. Tyrion Lannister was married before. He grew bored of his wife, and he made a gift of her to his father's guards. Baelish tells Catelyn the same thing he tells Sansa Stark at the end of A Storm of Swords, after the Purple Wedding. Baelish is sailing with Sansa to the Fingers. He knows about Tisha and tells the lie. Is this to explain why Sansa doesn't give a crap about Tyrion in the next few books? It may just be to impress us about Baelish's research abilities. It made me wonder if Tisha was an open secret in the Westerlands. The Red Comet appears first in two places. In Bran's last chapter in Game of Thrones, Maester Wolf sees it when the Raven announcing Ned Stark's death arrives at Winterfell. It also appears as the first star of the evening at Drogo's funeral where Daenerys lights herself and the 3 eggs on fire. She considers it a herald of her coming, and in the Clash of Kings, the comet is called King Joffrey's Comet, the Red Messenger at Riverrun, and the Red Sword by Gendry. Everyone, even Aeron Damphair, lays claim to the comet as representing their own gods. In regards to historical observation, Tycho Brahe is usually given credit for realizing that comets are astronomical phenomenons. The Greeks, led by Aristotle, believed that comets were a product of the atmosphere, a corruption of the air. Part of that is because they observed the flight paths and believed that comets did not follow an elliptical orbit. Late astronomers realized that comets did follow an orbit, but a much longer one than nearby planets. Daemon Targaryen was a great man and a monster. These words are attributed to Maester Galdane, who wrote The Rogue Prince. In general, the 3 novellas, The Rogue Prince, The Princess and the Queen, and The Sons of the Dragon are attributed to GRM, while other parts in The World of Ice and Fire are written by Elio Garcia and Linda Antonsen. I have only read Fire and Blood, which does not give a co-writer credit to the 2 others. In any case, Daemon is a great character, although his actions are often morally questionable. His final fight was killing Aemond at the God's Eye, where he jumped from Caraxes' saddle to kill Aemond with Dark Sister as the 2 dragons were falling into the lake. Vigor as one of the big 3 is much stronger than Caraxes. Needless to say, the scene is incredible, and if HBO ever remakes it, let's hope they spend a ton on the CGI. Jon will become more like the Rogue Prince over time, for good and bad. He will also be the wonder and terror of his age. Chapter 25, The Mercy of Others. Chapter text. The Mercy of Others. Lord Snow, the wind has died down. The captain said. John nodded and Maturin Mandaeli walked away, leaving him on the rail alone with his thoughts. The riverboat was becalmed on the blue and green waters of the God's Eye. To the south, he could see a faint trace of the island, as if the heart trees refused to let him go. Magic was strong on the Isle of Faces and it was more than just the children. He played the words of Demon Targaryen back in his head. Most prophecies were worth less than wind, the babbling of fools, charlatans and hucksters. Demon was none of those, and his words had been blunt and forthright. He did not hide behind mummery when he declared that Jon would die in victory near the God's Eye. The rogue prince committed many crimes in his wild and reckless adventures, but he had never been accused of lying. Jaehaerys the Old had lived a long and mostly happy life, dying a few moons short of his 70th name day. He was the great exception. Most Targaryen princes died young. Demon Targaryen had lived longer than most, dying at 49. Jon wondered what his namesake would have said to a witch or warlock predicting his death when he was young. He would have laughed or cursed, Jon thought, probably both. Prophecies were faithless creatures, likely to stab you in the back or kick in your head at the worst moment. Prince Demon would not allow himself to be slain easily. He would defy his enemies and sell his life dearly. So will I, Jon thought. He did not care about the ravings of red priests or visions of dead dragon princes. What did it matter if he was Azor Ahai or the third head of the dragon? I will destroy my enemies. I will keep House Stark safe. The ancient Valyrians had known the truth of the world. All men must die, but first all men must serve. Jon listened with Arya while his brother Robb recounted Sir Garland's offer. Arya had heard the tale already. The Tyrells wanted an alliance with the Starks and the Lannisters. The play was bold but greedy. Jon wondered how Joffrey would react to Sansa as his good sister. A marriage of Sansa into House Tyrell means we would be honor bound to intervene in any dispute between the Reach and the Lannisters. Jon said. We are not likely to support Joffrey in anything. Robb said. Not supporting Joffrey does not mean fighting for the Tyrells. We would be embroiled in disputes over the Iron Throne between the Roses and the Lions. Jon said. Do you think Joffrey would pick a fight with the Tyrells? He needs their swords. Robb said. Joffrey was betrothed to Sansa. Our father was Hand and Joffrey ordered his head cut off. Mace Tyrell is now Hand. Lady Margaery should not trust Joffrey's mercy. Jon said. There is another thing. Arya, tell us what you saw again. Robb said. I saw Our Lady Mother walking with Baelish near the Hall of 1,000 Hearths. He said that Tyrion would be the undisputed heir of Casterly Rock if Sir Jaime died. Baelish said the imp might stop any exchange, and that he might rape Sansa, or have his guards do so. Arya said. His guards? Jon asked in surprise. What exactly did Baelish say? His exact words. Arya screwed up her face in thought. He said Tyrion had been married once, and grew bored of his wife. He gave her to his father's guards, 100 of them in one day, and watched. Baelish thought, no, he said that Lord Tywine knew but was disgusted with Tyrion for his lust. Jon pulled his hands in fists under his chin. Baelish is lying. I know the true tale. Tyrion was married when he was young, to a small folk girl. His father found out and had her raped as a whore by dozens of men. He forced Tyrion to watch, and his son never looked for the girl again. Lannisters. What a disgusting family. Robb said. That may be true, but there is an immediate question to ask. Why is Baelish lying? Why is he trying to convince Lady Stark that the dwarf means to harm Sansa? Jon said. My mother arrested Tyrion once already. She clearly doesn't trust the imp. Robb said. That explains why the lie works on Lady Catelyn, but it does not explain why Baelish would lie. His lie about the Valyrian steel dagger caused great trouble. Why is he accusing the dwarf about Sansa? Wait, you have told her that Baelish is a liar? Jon said. Robb sighed. She does not listen. The Tullys have always been stubborn. She grew up with him at Riverrun. I have told her not to speak with him, but she says that Baelish is still fond of her. And that we can get no other news from King's Landing. She is frightened for Sansa. He is a creepy old man. And Nymeria dislikes him. We should kill him, Arya said with an angry outburst. Arya, we can't, Robb said shocked. He has guessed right at Harrenhal. And he came under a peace banner. The direwolves have better senses than we do, but Littlefinger has left the castle already. Why is Baelish saying that Tyrion wants to keep Sansa in King's Landing? Jon said. He wants the imp to take the blame. They are going to keep Sansa and break their promises, Arya said. Fucking Lannisters, Robb said. Grey Wind growled angrily by his side. I think Arya is right. But who are they? Who will keep Sansa prisoner? And why? Jon said. Isn't it obvious? We defeated Tywin at the Red Fork 3 weeks ago. The Tyrell army was 500 miles away. Each week, they can over 70 miles. Martin Rivers says scouts from the Reach have been seen near Blackwater Rush. And their men are already at King's Landing. If they continue marching, they will cross into the Riverlands. In a few more weeks, they will be at the southern tip of the God's Eye and less than 100 miles from Harrenhal, Robb said. Do you think the Tyrells mean to betray us? Arya said. That is the problem. We don't know. But Robb is right. Every day, their men draw closer. And an army does not march 500 miles for peace. We cannot harry their forces because that would start a war. But if they refuse to hand over Sansa, Jon said. I will not leave the Riverlands without our sister. I will not allow her to be tormented further, Robb said. We don't know who is plotting to stop the peace. It might be Tyrion Lannister. It could be Tywin. It might even be some of the Tyrells. Even if Sir Garland is friendly, he may not make the decisions. The Reachmen may be hungry for battle to prove themselves to the throne. Or perhaps Joffrey or Cersei wish to keep Sansa prisoner. Jon said. Can't we do anything? Arya complained. Jon shook his head. This is the fog of war, sister. If you want speed and force, you cannot have precision and certainty. It is hard to know the true strength and position of your enemies, or even who your enemies are. That is why it is better to attack. In every battle so far, the North has been on the offense, so we can determine the battleground. But now, we may have to defend. I prefer to attack, Robb said. But isn't Harrenhal a strong castle? Can't we defend it against the Reach? Arya said. Harrenhal has strong walls, but allowing your enemy to trap you is not good strategy. We would lose our supply lines and be unable to defend the small folk. I do not wish to be sieged for many moons. I will not sit here while they pillage the Riverlands again, Robb said. It is better to defend than attack, sister. But it is best to attack with surprise. We can hope for the best, but expect the worst. The Reachmen believe their army is far stronger than ours. But any army can be beaten. We need to prepare for war, Jon said. The light rain sweeping over the city did not bother Tyrion. For once, King's Landing did not stink of sour wine, horse piss, and night soil. Wagons of wheat, barley and apples arrived every day, the largesse of the Reach. Merchants, attracted by the high prices, sailed cogs into the harbour and drove caravans through the 7 gates. Tyrion had countermanded Littlefinger's entrance tax. The desperation to seek shelter behind the city walls had faded, and the city needed to restart commerce. King's Landing celebrated the tidings of the peace talks at Harrenhal. Even begging brothers stopped proclaiming that the city would be destroyed by the vicious Northmen. At Cobbler's Square and Flea Bottom, Tyrion was no longer called a freak who beguiled the wretched Joffrey into dastardly deeds. Joffrey was wretched and his nephew needed no help to be a villain. Tyrion pretended not to care about the words of others, but no one enjoyed being called a twisted little demon monkey, not even by simpletons or small folk. He sat down for his breakfast, porridge, honey, milk and crisp fried fish. The saltiness of the finger fish contrasted wonderfully with the sweetness of the honeyed porridge. All he needed for a complete meal was spiced wine, mulled with honey, cinnamon bark, cloves and crushed cardamom pods. Tyrion poured the milk over the oat porridge when Bronn ushered in his tired squire, fresh from the King's Road. "Ah, Podrick, come join me," Tyrion declared. "How was Harrenhal? I imagine the Starks treated you more gently than our debacle at Riverrun." The skinny boy flushed a bit but managed not to stutter. "Pardon, my lord. I never managed to get into Harrenhal. Lord Tarley ordered most of us to stay outside the castle. Very few squires, only those directly serving the envoys, entered the hall." Tyrion took a bite of fish. "So you were unable to deliver the letter?" "No, my lord." Pardrick took off the small piece of parchment sewn into his belt. Lord Baelish watched everyone, even the squires, closely. "I slept with the letter in my tent and stayed away from Baelish and his guards." "A pity that you didn't learn anything new," Tyrion said. "I did, my lord. I managed to speak to Josmin Pekalidon. He is Sir Adam Marbrand's new squire. The old one was killed at the Red Fork. He was in the Hall of 100 Hearths and saw the young wolf and the bloody wolf at the negotiations." Pardrick squeaked. Tyrion had met Andro Pekalidon, a minor knight with a small keep near Lannisport. And did this squire have anything interesting to say? Peck was surprised. The Northerners were not the wild savages he expected. He said that Robb Stark was noble and honorable, and that Jon Snow was not a raving monster. Pod said. "We knew that already. They spared our lives at Riverrun in the hope of peace." Tyrion said. "There is more, my lord. Peck found out from the squires of the Riverlords how Harrenhal fell. The brave companions betrayed House Lannister and captured Lork and the Westermen. Snow promised that none of his men would harm him, but Hoat had tortured many prisoners. Snow had Sir Harrock of Kenning beat the goat half dead and then hung on a cross to die. Clever, Tyrion thought. Snow had not violated his oath. And did Sir Harrock join the goat on the gallows? Tyrion said. "No, my lord." Peck was very surprised. The White Wolf treated Sir Harrock with great respect. He was allowed to return to Case and his wounds were tended. Without a ransom. Tyrion raised his eyebrows. His squire nodded. That was odd. The bloody wolf was not known as a generous enemy. "Wait, what happened to Lork?" "Who, my lord?" Pod said. "Sir Amory Lork. My lord father left him as Castellan at Harrenhal." Tyrion said. "I don't know. Maybe the brave companions killed him. There was no sign of him at Harrenhal or in the Hanging Forest." Pod said. A growing sense of unease ruined Tyrion's breakfast. "Pod, did Pekalidon think the North was to be trusted?" "Peck says the Rivermen believe the Starks honorable but that if angered, would wreak bloody havoc. They fear Jon Snow more than Robb Stark." Pod said. Tyrion thought that Peck's assessment was accurate. He would not like to be dragged before the wolves again. Tyrion entered the Red Keep, Bronn and several other hand-picked sellswords trailing. The inner yards bristled with dozens of new faces, hundreds of new gold cloaks drafted from the Crown lands. Only Sandor Clegane was familiar. The newest member of the Kingsguard refused to be knighted or change his battered grey plate, making a mockery of the white cloaks. He sat with Varys and opposite Pycelle at the first small council meeting since the talks with the North. Baelish walked into the room with Joffrey. "Well, why hasn't the meeting begun?" Joffrey asked as he took his seat. "Your Grace, we must wait for the Reachman. Mace Tyrell, Mathis Rowan, and Paxter Redwine have yet to arrive." Tyrion said. "That just shows your lack of knowledge, uncle." Joffrey spat. "Mace Tyrell rode this morning to Tumblers Falls to meet the main host. He believes that Lord Tarley and Sir Garland require his sage advice. Paxter Redwine is with the royal fleet, preparing an attack on Stannis at Dragonstone. And Mathis Rowan." Baelish chuckled. "His daughter was caught in bed with a minstrel last night who fled the inn. I offered my men to find the raper so Lord Rowan can send him to the wall. None of the Reachmen were present, and Littlefinger smirked. This meeting clearly would not be about planning the royal wedding." Tyrion looked about for a pitcher of wine. "Lord Baelish, I congratulate you on your dealings with those savages from the north. For that, you will be named Lord of Harrenhal and Lord Paramount of the Trident." Joffrey commanded. "But the throne has promised that no titles or lands be stripped from the Rivermen," Tyrion said. Joffrey waved the objection away. "And what happens when the Northern army retreats? No one respects this new Lord Tully. The honor is greater than I deserve, your grace, But I must recount a troubling observation. After our negotiations concluded, Robb Stark stormed off like a petulant boy. But only a moment later, Sir Garland followed him to converse in secret. Baelish said, feigning concern. So? Joffrey said. But your grace. Baelish said. Lord Baelish, did you overhear their conversation? Tyrion said. No, Lord Hand. They conversed in secret. Baelish said. Then, the talk might be nothing. We know that Robb Stark travelled to Bitterbridge. The Lords of the Reach did not give him any aid then. Why would that change now? Tyrion said. My little birds say that Sir Garland struck up a friendship with Lord Stark when he visited the Reach and the Stormlands. Perhaps he thanked him for saving his good brother, Renly, from the Shadow Assassin before he sadly passed. Varys tittered. Who cares what Sir Garland said to Robb Stark? The wolves leave after the exchange of my uncle Sir Jaime. Good riddance. Joffrey said. But your grace, what if they don't leave? Baelish said smoothly. What if they stay? They are only a few days from King's Landing. Without Sansa Stark, they might ride down the King's Road. If the city gates are opened to them, there could be another sack. Joffrey turned a ghastly white. He clenched the arms of his chair tightly. Do you think Sir Garland means to betray me? Should I put his head on a spike on the royal gate? No, no. Baelish rushed to assure him. Sir Garland is valiant and true, and your future good brother. I mean Robb Stark and this cruel Jon Snow are evil men who might see your mercy as an opportunity. You must guard yourself against their faithlessness. They may find traitors willing to betray you, my king. Littlefinger did not need to stab others in the back, Tyrion decided. The Master of Coin was skilled in open deceit. Baelish, these are wild accusations. What proof do you have? You did not hear what Sir Garland said. The North has agreed to peace. The Tyrells are allied with the Iron Throne. You have invented a conspiracy out of thin air. I agree, your grace. There are no ravens flying from King's Landing to Harrenhal or Riverrun. Pycelle said. My apprentices keep careful watch. Joffrey relaxed. I want the heads of any traitors. No one can threaten me, no one. I want to be alerted of any plots, any hints of treason, any sign of northern treachery. He stormed off, Sandor Clegane guarding his back. Tyrion glared at Littlefinger. What are you playing at, Baelish? Why set Joffrey against the Tyrells? I defended Sir Garland. Baelish retorted. Surely, you do not trust the Starks. They still want revenge against Joffrey. What is the saying? The North remembers. Who could forget? Joffrey's first action was to chop off the head of the Hand and the Warden of the North. No wonder he is known as the Good King Joffrey. Varys said. Baelish stood up, a smirk on his sly face. My lords, I go to the Eyrie this night, to woo Lady Lysa Arryn for the Iron Throne. I am sure you will be doing your duty to his grace by organizing the royal wedding. Enjoy planning the 50 dishes with Lady Olenna. As Littlefinger sauntered out, Tyrion wondered what had just happened. Baelish obviously planned the seduction of Lord Rowan's daughter to remove any Reachman from this meeting of the small council. But if he was leaving King's Landing, then what did the Master of Coin have to gain by fueling Joffrey's paranoia? Tyrion realized that he had missed something. He hated that feeling. When the war horn blew, Arya scrambled from the smithy to the steps of the Tower of Dread. No army approached from the east or the west. The south was quiet, with a few riverboats docked on the shore of the God's Eye. The cloud of dust came from the north, and Arya could see horses and armored men riding on the road. Even this far away, she could see the sky blue on saddles, helmets and shields, the colors of the Vale. The numbers are too few to be the knights, Cat. Sir Brynden Tully said to her mother. The Blackfish stood with Lady Stark, Lord Edmure and Lady Went, ready to receive their visitors. Robb waited behind, his honor guard at his side. They are not bearing any banners. Jon said quietly. Her brother was right. Arya could see sigils on sleeves and tabards, a red castle on a white field, a black broken wheel on green, 5 silver arrows pointing up, a yellow burning tower, but none of the riders carried banners. A man in red rune-marked armor hailed Robb. Lord Stark, I bring men from the Vale who would fight with you, the man said. I thank you, Sir Robar. Robb said warmly. Allow me to introduce some of our best knights. Sir Michael Redfort, Sir Roland Wainwood, and Sir Elbert Belmore. Robar said. They were quite young, not more than a few years older than her brother Robb. Arya wondered if they had been knighted recently. More riders on destriers entered the yard. The Vale men were all mounted, with no footmen or archers. There were a few wagons, and Arya was surprised when Hot Pie grinned at her from the top of a cart pulled by 2 mules. Sir Robar, did my sister give you leave to join us? Catelyn Stark asked. Lady Arryn forbid any of us from leaving the Vale. But Roland's uncle is now the Knight of the Bloody Gate, and he would not imprison us. Robar said. Our fathers would fight with Ned Stark, but they cannot disobey House Arryn. We are mostly second and third sons. The knight with the broken wheel said. You are a first son, Sir Roland, but your father is heir to Iron Oaks, and your grandmother Lady Anya. Do your houses know that you have come? Brynden Tully asked shrewdly. Sir Robar nodded, as did several other companions. How many are you? Robb asked. 700. Sir Robar said. So few. Edmure Tully grumbled. The lords of the Vale could field an army greater than 20,000. 700 was smaller than the forces of a single northern bannerman. Even one remote mountain clan could provide more men. Robb stepped forth and quieted the disappointed murmur in the crowd. You are welcome, sirs. The North thanks you for remembering my father Lord Stark's ties to the Vale. Join us for meat and mead. You are the guests of House Stark at Harrenhal. Arya escaped the hustle and bustle by hiding in the armory. While servants at the castle prepared for the feast, Jon took inventory of the newly forged armor. Her brother decided that gauntlets and vambraces would be too cumbersome given the weight of the long pike. Each pikeman was issued a thick breastplate, cut open at the shoulders, tassets to protect the upper thighs, and a sturdy helmet. The helmet looked like a wide-brimmed farmer's hat, only in steel. Padded linings held by rivets made the helm more comfortable and allowed for steel ear flaps or cheek plates. The deep bowl absorbed missile fire, and the wide turned-down brim would protect from a sword slash to the head. Soldiers, winter town boys and small folk rushed about, relaying Jon's orders to the noisy and full smithy. Arya knew that she should be doing the same. But if her lady mother saw her, she would be dragged off to be bathed, scrubbed, and forced into a gun. She wanted to go to dinner as a squire, bearing needle, not a marriage prize. Her gold and crimson brigandine was better than any dress. The door opened, and a knight from the Vale walked through. He wore a red castle on a white field within a red embattled border over his mail shirt. He was young, with a serious look but mild eyes. He hesitated for a moment and then spoke. Are you Lord Snow? I am, sir. Jon said. Her brother put away the high-combed helmet. I would be glad to speak to you, my lord. May I be granted a private audience, he said. Jon nodded, and the small folk and the winter town boys rushed out. Arya stayed, her hand on needle, and her eyes firmly on the knight. Arya Stark is my squire and my heir. She has my complete trust. Jon said. The man nodded. Lord Snow, my name is Sir Michael Redfort. You are Lord Horton Redfort's fourth son by his third wife, Lady Edwina Tolette. Jon said. The knight's eyes bulged in surprise. But how did you know? Can you read minds? Jon shrugged and pointed to the large leather book on top of the shelf. Hardly. That is the history of the greater and the lesser houses. After Sir Robar's introduction, I looked up your name, as well as Roland Wainwood and Elbert Belmore. The knight nodded. I have come to ask a great favor, that you might intercede for me with your brother, Lord Stark. I would pledge my sword to him, but I hoped he might grant me a small keep in the north. Jon raised his eyebrows. Why ask me, sir? Why not speak to Robb directly? Lord Stark is rather busy. He is always surrounded by Northmen and Rivermen, and I thought you might look favorably on my reasons. Sir Michael soldiered on. There is a girl I love. I would marry her if I had my own lands. Your father rules a rich house. Why does he not? Jon stopped for a moment. He does not approve of your marriage. He wished me to marry Sir Robar's sister. Uzilla and I are friendly, but I love Maester. A bastard? Arya asked in surprise. Clearly, by the name and Lord Redfort's disapproval. Who is Maester? Jon asked. The king's bastard. Robert Baratheon was fostered in the Vale. He fathered her on some commoner and then promptly forgot. I was squired at the Eyrie and met her there. Michael said. And you want to make her your lady? Jon said. Maya, a lady? Sir Michael laughed out loud. She curses more than me. She would rather wear leather than a dress. All I wish is a small holdfast and a few villages, so we could stay together. You are a bastard too. You know the cloud that hangs over Maya. I am no matchmaker, sir. Does the girl care for you as well? Jon said. She gave herself to me. Sir Michael said. And I to her. What does that mean? Arya asked aloud. It means Sir Michael does not wish to dishonor her. Very well. I will speak to Robb. Jon said. Thank you, my lord. Sir Michael said gratefully. Her brother nodded and turned back to the armor for the pikesman. For a giant castle, there was no place for a knight to swear his fealty. There were too many watchers in Flowstone Yard or the barracks hall. Lady Went was preparing the whole of 100 hearths for a banquet. The September in front of the Tower of Ghosts had been ruined by dragonfire and not used for 300 years. Finally, Robb decided on the entrance to the Godswood, but far away from the heart tree. Sir Michael knelt, with the sword pointed down to the leaf-infested ground. I offer my services, Lord Stark. I will shield your back and keep your counsel and give my life for you and yours. I swear it by the old gods and the new. Robb took the hilt and laid the blade on Michael's shoulder. I vow that you shall always have a place by my hearth, and meat and mead at my table. And I pledge to ask no service of you that might bring you dishonor. I swear it by the old gods and the new. Arise. A dozen guests attended the ceremony. Robb and Jon, the Blackfish, the Great Jon and several northern heirs, Sir Robar Royce, and Sir Roland Waynwood. The two knights were happy for Sir Michael, although it meant he would not return to the Vale. Arya knew that Bran and Rickon would one day swear an oath to Robb when he granted them a keep. She bit her lip and wondered if one day, she would hold lands for either of her brothers. Arya was still thinking about that possibility when they rounded the corner near the armory. She barely avoided Gendry, who was carrying half a dozen steel breastplates from the smithy. Sir Michael looked at the blacksmith in shock, and stopped in mid-step. You are her brother, the stunned Valyman said. Pardon, my lord? Gendry asked. My betrothed. You look just like her. Michael said. Tall, broad, thick black hair, and blue eyes. I do not have a sister. Gendry said. You have one in the Vale. And I will be your good brother soon. Michael said. I am a bastard from King's Landing, a puzzled Gendry asked. Jon stepped forward. Sir Michael intends to marry Maester. Her father was Robert Baratheon. Gendry, you are the son of the king. In shock, Gendry dropped the armor, and the breastplates crashed onto the ground. How can we be certain about this, Gendry? Michael Redfort may be mistaken. Catelyn Stark said. Robb had retired to the Tower of Dread to investigate the matter further. The Solar had seen better days, but it was spacious enough for the Tullys, Starks and a few retainers. Gendry is right here, mother. Arya said. She sat with her friend who was still stunned by the revelations. Sir Michael seems certain. Robb said. Lady Stark, I had not realized that before, but Sir Michael speaks the truth. The boy looks like a young Renly, and everyone says that Renly was the very image of Robert. His jaw is square and his brows bushier. The boy's hair is dirty, but it is the same coal black. Brian said. We don't need to rely on guesswork. Arya and Gendry were attacked by gold cloaks and Lannister soldiers on the King's Road. Arya thought they were searching for her, but they were hunting for Gendry. Now we know why. Jon said. When they captured us, Lork demanded that we hand Gendry over. Lomi was already dead, so I told him that was Gendry's body. Arya said. But what does it matter then? The Lannisters think he is dead. Edmure Tully said. A dozen men had heard Sir Michael's words, and most were not in the Solar. Arya was not paranoid by nature, but news of Gendry's identity would spread quickly. Gendry is a clear threat to the Iron Throne. The Lannisters will try to kill him again. Jon said. But why? I am just a blacksmith's apprentice from Flea Bottom. Gendry burst out. Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen were sired by the Kingslayer. They are not stags. Robert and Renly are dead. Stannis has only a daughter, tried to kill his brother, and worships a fire god. You may have the best claim to House Baratheon. Jon said. Not just House Baratheon, but the Iron Throne. Robb said. I am just a smith. All I know is the forge. I can't even read. Gendry said, panicked. That was true, Arya thought. Gendry was happiest polishing helmets and beating on swords with hammers. He liked the idea of ruling over small folk as much as she did. We should send him away. Catelyn said. The Lannisters will be angered by his presence. My father, Lord Stark, would not allow his friend's son to be murdered by the Lannisters, and neither will I. Gendry, the North will protect you. Robb said. Arya elbowed Gendry in the ribs and hissed. Say something, stupid. I am thankful. I don't know nothing about being a lord, my lord. Gendry stammered. The boy will need guards. And we must know where he is at every moment. Catelyn said. Before Arya could complain, Jon nodded to Gendry. It is for your safety. They will find out who you are. Tell Lucan and Ben Blackthumb that you work for me directly now. Yes, my lord. Gendry said. Can I continue in the smithy? Aye, but stay close to my Wintertown boys. Pretend that nothing has happened at the feast. The news will come out soon enough. No need to hurry. Jon said. After the banquet, Arya sought out Jon. He had left the meal early, exiting after the dish of roasted squabs in a creamy mushroom sauce. Gendry was still dazed, incapable of more than eating, drinking and uttering a few words. Through the meal, many eyes looked at the blacksmith with great curiosity, lords, knights, and ladies. Even Hot Pie had asked as he served a loaf of freshly baked direwolf bread. Now that Arya was revealed as a Stark, and Gendry was Baratheon, Hot Pie wondered if he too was a long-lost noble, perhaps an Arryn or a Tyrell. Arya doubted that very much. Arya heard the voices of her two brothers behind the solar door. The 3 direwolves guarded the entrance, and she stepped in. They already know about Gendry. Arya declared. Who are they? Robb asked. My friend, Hot Pie. He was helping out in the kitchens. Arya said. His direwolf bread is very good. The Heddles sent him from the inn at the crossroads to guide the Valyman to Harrenhal. Robb said. What will happen to Gendry? Will you make him into a lord? Arya said. Robb is not a king, and only kings can legitimize a bastard. Jon said. Even if he was Gendry Baratheon, it would not get us men. Gendry has never been south of King's Landing. Black hair and blue eyes are not enough, and any Stormlanders would have to travel past the Tyrell army to make it to the Riverlands. Robb said. I am more worried about something else. Jon said. Who knew about Gendry at King's Landing? What do you mean? Robb asked. Gendry was apprenticed to Toib Homart. The name is Kohurik and they are known to be skilled blacksmiths. Who paid his commission? And then who betrayed him to the Lannisters? How would they know that Gendry was Robert's bastard? Jon said. Gendry was Robert Baratheon's issue, but the king was always drunk. It would be the hand that would take care of such matters. Robb said. Of course, and Jon Arryn likely knew about Gendry. But Jon Arryn died. And it is possible that Lord Stark knew, but then he died. Neither Jon Arryn nor Ned Stark would have told the Lannisters. How would they know who Robert's bastards were? He was rumored to have more than a dozen. Jon said. What if there were records or letters somewhere? That might prove that Gendry is Robert Baratheon's son. Arya said. Excellent, sister. Someone has those records, and gave them to. Jon thought aloud. Did that person tell Cersei or Joffrey? Why not Tywin? Or another Lannister? Robb said. Jon shook his head. Tywine and Jaime were fighting in the Riverlands. Tyrion was either at the Eyrie or traveling to Lannister forces. Joffrey had just become king. Perhaps to curry favor, someone told Joffrey who Robert's true heirs were. Gendry was forced to leave King's Landing to go to the wall. Someone also informed his master. But it can't be the same person. Why would you tell Joffrey and warn Gendry? Arya said. The better question is who would warn Gendry. Feeding Joffrey information makes you valuable to the throne. But why would they warn Gendry's master? It could not be any of his uncles. If they cared, they would have men take him directly to Dragonstone or Storm's End. Jon pursed his lips in deep thought. I have a guess who told Joffrey, but I do not know who spoke to Toib Homart. Who told Joffrey? Robb asked. The most likely person is Baelish. He worked for Jon Arryn. As Master of Coin, he handled payments the crown made to the king's bastards. Robert was a whoremonger and a drunk. Baelish owned brothels. That connection is obvious. But I do not know who arranged for Gendry's departure from King's Landing. Someone is working against the Lannisters, or at least trying to keep Robert Baratheon's bastards alive. Jon said. They may not care for the North either. Just because they want to spare Gendry, does not mean they will make a trustworthy ally. Robb said. You are suspicious, Robb. That is good. It will give us a better chance of survival. Jon said. You are worried about Joffrey's plots. Arya said. Joffrey is not the plotter. He is being played by others, but we do not know who. The war will not end until all of us, including Sansa, are safe back in the north. Jon said. Tyrion raised the fork of baked eggs to his mouth, pretended to chew, and then placed the food down, hidden by the untouched wine goblet. Varys gobbled the small goat cheese and potato tarts with gusto with delicate fingers, like a spider devouring hapless flies. If I were to poison you, it would not be with eggs. Varys giggled. Creamy baked eggs with herbs and bacon had been one of Tyrion's favorite dishes at Casterly Rock. The dwarf sighed and ate. The food was delicious, but he expected no less from at the mansion of the Master of Whispers. I wanted to ask if you knew Baelish's whereabouts. Bronn saw one of his guards at a brothel. That seems strange if he left for the Vale. Petyr Baelish enjoys confusing his enemies. The Merling King waits at the docks to take him to Gulltown, but our new Lord Paramount lingers outside King's Landing, waiting. He enjoys his plots, our little finger, just like you. Varys tittered. Tyrion raised his fork to object. Me. I am innocent as a newborn babe. My little birds say Podrick Payne left the city through the Lion Gate in Lannister colors, to your father's camp. Strange though, how he changed his attire, and rode on the Rosby Road. Now what business could young Pod have going east? Varys said. Podrick is hunting for shellfish in Blazewater Bay. Now that the fishing boats know about wildfire, crabs and clams are scarce in Fishmonger Square. Tyrion retorted. Come, my Lord Hand. What mission did you send Podrick on? Is he on some bold quest, to prove himself a knight? Varys said. I dispatched my squire with a letter to the Westerlands. For my service, my lord father would reward me with a betrothal. Who knows? It might be Lady Lefford. She is suitable for a dwarf now that she has been despoiled in the capture of the Tooth. Tyrion said. A pretty little lie. Perhaps you are the second most devious person in the Seven Kingdoms and not Littlefinger. Is your squire sending a raven to the Tooth, Riverrun or Harrenhal? Varys asked. There was no mirth in the eunuch's dark eyes when Tyrion shrugged in response. I have spies at the Golden Tooth and Riverrun, and my little birds roam freely now at Harrenhal. Curious, isn't it? Besides the goat's men, and a boy who lost his hand, the prisoners have been unharmed. This Jon Snow has a bloody reputation, but secretly, he is a lamb. Tyrion snorted. I do not think he will bleat for you. If the North takes King's Landing, Joffrey's head will decorate a pike. The Starks will kill anyone involved with Ned Stark's death. Then it is good that the North is returning north. Varys said. Are they? Tyrion asked in a doubtful tone. Littlefinger is up to something. He is inciting Joffrey against the Northerners. The gods only know what game Littlefinger is playing. Varys said. I sent Podrick to Duskendale so he could send a raven that Lady Sansa is safe, and unharmed. Enough blood has been shed in the Riverlands. Tyrion said. So that was your squire's mission. You believe the realm needs peace. A noble sentiment, but the storm has not passed yet. What do you know, Varys? Tyrion's eyes narrowed. Who ordered the massacre of the royal bastards? Varys said. Joffrey. My nephew's first act was to command the city watch to kill Robert's bastards. A baby girl on her mother's teat at Château's. Young boys in Flea Bottom. Another babe killed by gold cloaks in a tavern. I thought it was my sweet sister, but even she is not vicious enough to kill babes, less than a year old, in front of a crowd. Tyrion said. Robert Baratheon had 16 bastards, but only 2 that matter. Edric Storm, who Stannis Baratheon captured at Storm's End. But there was another, a boy older than both Edric and Joffrey. I removed him from harm's way, out of King's Landing. He has resurfaced. Tyrion had the sinking feeling of impending doom. And where is this bastard now? Gendry Waters is at Harrenhal and under heavy guard. Robb Stark and Jon Snow know that he has a real claim to House Baratheon and the Iron Throne. If the North throw their support behind this Gendry. Varys said. Tyrion groaned. All the more reason to settle quickly with the North. The last thing House Lannister needed was another Baratheon pretender to the throne. The banner of the Black She-Bear waved proudly as the soldiers, half mounted and half on foot, marched through the gatehouse that afternoon. On the road from the Tooth, new recruits had joined the Mormonts, curious small folk, hedge knights, garrisons of abandoned holdfasts and deserters hoping for new liege lords. At the van, a laughing Daisy rode with Lyra and Jory, and the 3 Mormont sisters gossiped as they entered Harrenhal. Jon waved a greeting, but he waited for the wagon, pulled by a team of mules, to swing into view. 24 Tully men and even more Mormonts guarded the humble cart, driven by an ornery old dwarf experienced in transporting prisoners to the wall or a hanging. Thick metal chains hung from the sides with the ends of extra manacles buried under fresh straw. Jon gave orders for the captive treated well, but no cleaning could remove the smell of piss-soaked wood. Locks of golden hair stood out against the drab pale yellow straw and brown tunic. Jaime Lannister flashed a carefree smile and stretched his long arms in a cat-like yawn. The Tully guards grumbled at the Kingslayer's arrogance, but Jon motioned for the wagon to be unlocked. Snow. Are 1,000 men not enough to guard me? Do you need the entire army and Harrenhal? The Lannister knight smirked. Sir Jaime. Have you been treated fairly? They gave you food and drink on the trip down from Riverrun? Jon asked. Hardtack, barley mush, mouldy cheese and water. I ate about as well as I did at Winterfell. You are a prisoner. You will have to wait until King's Landing for your feast. Jon's nose wrinkled. Although you certainly could use a bath. The bathhouse here only has 1 exit, so you would not need a guard. You are lucky to be treated so well, Kingslayer. If I had my choice, you would be locked away in the dungeons like the false knight you are. Sir Robin Roger ranted. False knights sleep on feather beds in King's Landing, sir. And no one cares what you or the floppy fish think. Jaime snapped back. He stood up straight, unchained and proud. Jon dismissed the Tully men, trusting in Ghost, as they walked into the Great Hall. Making friends wherever you go, Sir Jaime, he asked. The Lion of Lannister chuckled. When am I to be released, Snow? I have had enough of surly rivermen. And Mormont ladies threatening my manhood with a spiked mace. We have had enough of arrogant lions. Jarell said. She only came up to the top of Jaime's chin, but the fierce Mormont girl had no fear of the Kingslayer. We will send a raven to the Iron Throne tonight. King's Landing is 300 miles away. When they bring Sansa to Harrenhal, we will release you to the Lannister forces. The quicker that happens, the better. When the North leaves the Riverlands, your Uncle Kevan and the other highborns at the Golden Tooth and Riverrun will be freed. I see no reason why this should take longer than a moon. Jon said. And do you expect to get more ransoms for the prisoners? Jaime asked. No, so long as the Lannisters keep their promises. My brother wants an end to the suffering in the Riverlands. That, and my sister, is the price for your freedom. John replied. The Kingslayer nodded. What will you do after the war, Snow? I would have returned to the citadel, but that is not possible now. I will go back to Winterfell with Robb. After we destroy the Ironborn raiders, I will travel around the north. See the wall, visit Greywater Watch, and spend a few moons at Bear Island. John said. Just a few moons. I doubt you will leave my bed so quickly. Jory said with a toothy smile. One day, I promise to stay at Bear Island and build a fleet great enough to put fear into the Ironborn. But that must wait until the war ends. John said. But why then? Jaime looked at the men drilling in the yards with pikes, lances and swords, and the small folk working on the ballista. Smoke billowed from the chimneys of the smithy, and hammers clanged at 20 forges. The young Vale Knights displayed their skill and speed at mounted battle while the pikesmen marched forward and backward to the beat of drums. We are ready for a battle that I hope never comes. If you want peace, prepare for war. The Stark have survived 8,000 winters because we are strong, not weak. John said. I will be glad when you are back north, Snow. Jaime japed. As will I. Jory said as she took John's arm, and pulled him close. Jon Snow looked at the raven that had arrived that night. He wondered whether the message was a clever trap to lull House Stark into complacency. King's Landing was full of deceitful players, who hid treachery under a pretense of friendship. Could the dwarf truly be trusted? Perhaps this was a lie spread by one of his rivals, a false trail meant to sow misinformation. Still, his brother and sister needed to hear about this, and soon. They met at an abandoned granary in the Wailing Tower. No one had stayed in the haunted upper stories since Lady Lothston descended into madness and jumped to her death. Robb's guards stood outside, but Jon and Arya brought Ghost and Nymeria only. Jon handed over the letter to his surprised brother and sister. Are we certain this is from Tyrion Lannister? Robb asked. The letter claims to be sent on his orders from Duskendale. He would have done so to avoid spies in King's Landing. But whether these are his words or a trick by someone else, it is hard to say. There must be some truth to these words. Jon said. Tyrion has Sansa in the Tower of the Hand but swears that is only for her safety. He has rescued Jane Poole from Baelish's brothel. The dwarf says that he is working to ensure the return of Sansa and Jane, but he fears Baelish's plots. Robb said, reading the letter closely. Why would the imp write? We can't send him a raven. Arya asked. The obvious message is that he desires his brother's safe return. But Tyrion is also warning us about Baelish. I don't know what that means. The story that Baelish forced Jane Poole to work in his brothels, if we see Sansa again, she can confirm that tale. But whether Baelish is plotting against Tyrion or the North or the throne. Jon shrugged. I hate this Baelish. The letter makes me uneasy. Robb said. Of course it does. Arya said. If the imp is afraid for his brother, then something bad can happen to our sister. Joffrey had better not hurt her. The Lannisters promised that Sansa would be freed, and the Tyrells said they wanted her to marry Willers. Robb said. At Riverrun, Tyrion offered Ned Stark's safe return, but he was executed by Joffrey a few days later. All these plots and tricks, we do not know how to play these games. Jon said. Then what should we do? Robb said. We need to stay with our strengths. King's Landing is full of liars, Lannisters, Littlefinger, even the Tyrells. They are better at treachery than we are. Even if the letter is not a lie, then it speaks to Baelish's plots. Jon said. Gods. I hate all this. Fighting on the battlefield is far easier. Robb said. It is, but we cannot afford to be beaten by treachery. Sansa is in danger in King's Landing, and until she leaves, we have to be ready for any betrayal. Jon said grimly. From the battlement nearest the Solar of the Hand, Tyrion watched King's Landing. The Mirish spyglass pointed toward the wharves near the river gate where the Merling King lay docked. Many nights had passed but the galley remained tied up. Either Littlefinger had tricked Varys on his comings and goings or something sinister was afoot. A captain might stop for a few days, if his ship needed repairs. But nearly 2 Senites in a city with little trade, that made no sense. When Podrick returned to the city, Tyrion tasked the boy with shadowing Baelish as retainers. Bronn's face was well known as his guard, and Shagger and the mountain men were brigands, not spies. Tyrion thought to ask Sir Jacelyn Bywater for help, but Littlefinger had greased many palms in the city watch. Pod was quiet and forgettable, but the boy found little. Lothar Brune enjoyed drinking and kettle black whoring. Pardrick waved eagerly from the solar window, and Tyrion put down the spyglass to waddle back. Bronn followed, his hand on the pommel of his sword. "Have you sighted Baelish at last?" Tyrion asked. The squire nodded. "But not with his men. Peck called on me last night. Sir Marbrand was outside the city with Lord Tywine. Lord Baelish met your father." "My father? But he is at Tumbler's Falls with the Reachmen. Why would he come back to King's Landing?" Tyrion squawked. His lord father ruled House Lannister with an iron fist, and did not pretend to care for any of his children's opinions. Peck does not know. When Lord Baelish came, all of the commanders were asked to leave the tent. Pardrick said. His father did not have many commanders left, Tyrion thought. The wolves had captured or killed most of the Lannister captains, besides Gregor Clegane and Adam Marbrand. But Sir Adam was quite trusted among the Westermen. What was Baelish hiding? Peck left with Sir Marbrand and your father to go west. Pardrick said. But that does not tell us about Littlefinger. He is about as likely to lead an army as me. Where is Baelish now? Tyrion said. Bronn looked out the solar window. Outside our door. A large group of men approached. 4 wore the white cloak of the Kingsguard, but there was nearly 100 more. Pycelle, Varys and Baelish followed Joffrey as they rode to the Tower of the Hand. Tyrion groaned. Seeing his nephew was always a trial. And Joffrey called a meeting of the small council the day after Littlefinger met his father. That was no coincidence. Where is Sansa Stark? Joffrey sneered. Tyrion had more men in the tower, but few sellswords would dare attack a royal party. And the royal guards wore full plate and were heavily armed. Sandor Clegane's scarred face loomed large over Tyrion. The Hound was more dangerous than the 3 other Kingsguard. Pardrick Payne gently guided Lady Sansa through the door. The Stark girl greeted the king without fear, and gave a low graceful curtsy. Sansa Stark was a lovely girl and far better than Joffrey deserved. Then again, a whore with a pox was more worthy than his nephew. Lady Sansa is under the protection of the Hand. Tyrion said coolly. But your father has agreed to this. And Lord Tywine is Hand. Baelish said. Littlefinger's eyes glittered with open mockery and victory. Why are you in King's Landing, Lord Baelish? I thought you had left for the Vale to woo Lysa Arryn. Tyrion said. I received dark tidings that His Grace needed to hear urgently. The Vale remains neutral, but 2nd and 3rd sons have joined House Stark. There are knights from House Royce, Waynwood, Redfort, Belmore, and Egon who would fight with the wolves. Baelish said. And what has my lord father agreed to? Tyrion said. Lady Sansa needs to remain a guest of the Iron Throne. The Starks pose too great of a danger. They have a Baratheon pretender in the Riverlands, a Gendry Waters born to some nameless whore in Flea Bottom. Baelish said. Robert had many bastards. Why does this one matter? Is he going to march an army of whores and urchins against the Red Keep? I suppose that strikes fear in your Kingsguard. Tyrion said. The comment angered Sumerian and Saboros, but the Hound only smiled. You are a fool, uncle. Joffrey shrieked. What if they marry Sansa Stark to this bastard? The bastard has no bannerman. In time, that may change, but the Starks have promised to return north. How would this Gendry raise men from the Stormlands? He is not Robert Baratheon. The men who rebelled against the dragons were great lords, not unknown bastards. Tyrion argued. Lord Tyrion has not seen this Gendry Waters. My little birds have. They say he is a fierce-looking warrior, strong, burly, and that he carries a warhammer in battle. Varys said. Looking fierce does not mean he is fierce. And there won't be another battle of the Ruby Ford. Unless your grace intends to lead our men into the Trident. Tyrion said. Joffrey exploded in anger. You go too far, dwarf. My father was a fool to match me with a traitor's daughter. I will not have another Stark Baratheon marriage to stir up my enemies. Sansa Stark will only leave King's Landing when her brothers are dead. What of the Tyrells? They wanted Sansa Stark given to them. Tyrion said. Your Lord Father has spoken with Lord Mace. The Tyrells do not want a marriage between a Baratheon bastard and Sansa Stark to threaten their rose. Lord Tarly and the forces of the Reach are eager to prove themselves in battle, as brave men often are. Baelish said. And Sir Jaime. And the captives the North has taken. Tyrion said. They can rot in the Riverlands. They failed me when they got captured. The King's men should win, not be beaten by northern savages. Joffrey said. I want their heads. This Gendry Waters. Robb Stark. Jon Snow. Joffrey was more Aes the Mad than Robert the Drunk. Tyrion wondered when his nephew's bouts of hysteria and sudden rages would become evident to the entire court. As soon as possible, he would leave King's Landing and his mess of a nephew for Mace Tyrell and his father. He looked at Sansa Stark. The girl refused to show weakness and Tyrion marveled at her composure. He would do his best to protect her. Very well, but Sansa stays here, at the Tower of the Hand. Tyrion said. We may still need to trade her to the north. The north will not matter once the Reach defeats them in battle. Baelish smiled. And I believe Lady Sansa will be safer in Maegor's Holdfast, under the watchful eye of the king. No. The crown cannot afford another Ned Stark. Before his nephew could rage, Tyrion offered a compromise. His Grace can send guards to the Tower of the Hand. They can watch over the Lady Sansa as well, but my Lord Father will not be pleased if she comes to harm. Your Grace, I believe that to be a sensible solution. Lord Tywine only wants the best for the kingdom. Pycelle said. Joffrey glared for a moment, and then turned to his white cloaks. Doc, guard Sansa Stark. Make certain that you do not lose her. The Hound nodded, and the king stomped away. Tyrion cursed silently. Baelish had played his cards well, and news of this Gendry would prevent any hope of peace. An unknown blacksmith with no name born from a whore in Flea Bottom. His idiot nephew might force the North to support the bastard that he feared. Robb Stark waited on his mount as the riders came from south on the King's Road under a white flag of parley. It had taken a week, but the exchange would finally be made near the great walls of Harrenhal. The northern lords, even Roose Bolton, assembled at his side, as did his lady mother and the Tullys. The Kingslayer was guarded by the three great dire wolves. No horse or man could outrun Grey Wind, Ghost and Nymeria. His honor guards parted for Jon's horse. There is no wagon. Jon whispered in his ear. Robb's eyes narrowed. A half a dozen horses rode in front, and he could make out Sir Garland and the odious Petyr Baelish. There was no sign of Sansa Stark, and no wheelhouse for a highborn lady. Behind him, Grey Wind snarled. Where is my sister? Robb said, any pretense of goodwill gone. Sir Garland winced. I am sorry, Lord Stark. But your sister remains at King's Landing. You promised her return. You have broken your word. Robb said bitterly. His Grace refuses to allow her to leave. He fears northern treachery against the Iron Throne. You have Vale men fighting on your side. You have a Baratheon pretender at Harrenhal. His Grace Joffrey wishes to restore peace and justice to the Seven Kingdoms. He cannot allow any more plotting against the crown. Petyr Baelish said. What will happen to Sansa? Catelyn Stark asked urgently. Lady Sansa will be a lady-in-waiting for Queen Margaery. Baelish said. She will be safe. My sister Margaery and my brother Loras will look after her. Garland said. Sansa is a prisoner and a hostage. Robb's anger was obvious to all. I will not leave the Riverlands until my sister Sansa is returned to me. My father would not abandon his daughters to the bastard on the Iron Throne, and neither will I. You have no choice, Lord Stark. We want the Westerman prisoners returned, Lord Stark, and your men to give up Harrenhal. Randyll Tarly said. Robb laughed loudly. It was not a pleasant sound. And why would the North do that? You would leave the Riverlands alive. Our men have crossed Blackwater Rush. 30,000 from the Reach. Lord Tywine has 10,000 more. We have reinforcements ready at King's Landing and High Garden. Even with the Rivermen and the Valleymen, your army cannot be larger than 20,000. The Tyrell army is fresh and unblooded. Your forces are tired and have fought many battles. Our victory is certain. Tarly said. Nothing is certain in war. The North has been outnumbered before and won. Robb said. Against the Lannisters. Not the Reach. Tarly said. Be reasonable, Lord Stark. No one doubts the courage of your men or your skill at war. With the remains of the Lannister army, we have twice your men. I am sorry it has come to this, but bend the knee and go home. Garland said. In time, when cooler heads prevail, His Grace may be more inclined to mercy when there are no threats to the throne. His Grace would be pleased if you deliver the bastard Gendry back to King's Landing. It would be better for relations between the North and the Iron Throne, and the Lady Sansa would be given more freedom. In time, if peace reigns, His Grace might even let her return to Winterfell. Baelish said. And why would he do that? Jon spoke up. Our army is 200 miles away, and the king won't give back our sister, after we defeated the Lannister forces. If we are 2,000 miles away, Joffrey will not change his mind. His Grace is young and will become wiser and kinder with time and marriage. King Joffrey will be more merciful to Lady Sansa after the North bends the knee. Baelish said. You cannot win this war. You might hole up in Harrenhal for many moons, but the Tyrell army will defeat you. Tarly blustered. The Tyrell army sieged Storm's End for a year in the rebellion and failed to take the castle. They did not win the war. Jon said. Robb, perhaps we should speak further. There may be some way. Lady Stark said. We have spoken enough. Robb turned and spoke to his lords. Bind Sir Jaime. He will return to Riverrun. Robb turned again and spat on the ground. This is what I think of your words. I will not let my sister remain a hostage to Joffrey the Illborn. The North will not bend the knee, or heed the promises of liars. House Stark does not rely on the mercy of others. Then, that means war. Sir Garland said with regret. Aye. War is winter and winter is coming. Robb rode away with Jon Snow at his side. Author's notes. Daemon Targaryen was a scoundrel, a whoremonger, and a troublemaker who feuded with many others, House Hightower, the Triarchy, and his brother, the king, but he does not seem to have lied. He used deception in warfare, but more in the manner of Sansa. I have compared ancient Valyria to the Roman Republic before, but the sayings of the faceless men are very much like the Romans. The Roman Republic had great courage and considerable dedication to the notion of public service. Of course, they also butchered cities, massacred their enemies, and played dirty in politics. From 100 BC to the start of the Roman Empire, the politics were much like Game of Thrones, you win or you die. The fog of war is referred to many military writers, but the term was coined by Clausewitz, the Prussian general. He writes, war is the realm of uncertainty, 3/4 of the factors on which action in war is based are wrapped in a fog of greater or lesser uncertainty. A sensitive and discriminating judgment is called for, a skilled intelligence to scent out the truth. Castles really declined as defenses for two reasons. The first is gunpowder and cannon /artillery strong enough to destroy walls. But the second is that the social structure changed due to guns. Infantry armed with guns dominated, and the mounted knight, the basic unit of feudal society, was toast. This means defending population centers and cities became the focus of new warfare. Robb and Jon may be anachronistic in caring for the plight of small folk. In the Middle Ages, the general philosophy was the invaders can't take the land, so once they exhaust themselves, we are still lord or baron. Nobody gave a crap about peasants. The pikesmen wear the armor of the Swiss mercenaries. Essentially, they needed armor only to protect themselves from missile fire. The wall of pikes would block arrows as well. It was quite difficult to attack the lower legs. The History of the Greater and Lesser Houses is the book that Arya brings Tywin on the show after Lorke admits he can't read. It is a well-written scene. Betrayal is so common in GOT that the minor characters are treated as cannon fodder. Catelyn meets Maya on the climb to the Eyrie and learns that Maya hopes that Michael Redfort will marry her after being knighted. Catelyn of course knows that highborns, even fourth sons, do not marry bastards even if they took their maiden heads. This is contrasted to the nobility of Robb Stark, who screws the North badly by falling for the whole Westerling garbage. Here, Sir Michael is actually brave, unlike the supposed gallant swordsman in the books. If you read carefully, the Vale is full of sanctimonious hypocrites. There is a really long paragraph in Feast of Crows where Brian meets Gendry, and goes off on this long description. It is like a passage out of a Harlequin romance. In the books, the massacre of Robert's bastards are ordered by Cersei. In the TV show, it is hinted that Joffrey sends the orders. I think this is because it is easier for TV to focus on a sneering Joffrey than the interior monologue of Cersei. I actually think the TV works better because if Cersei was planning to kill the bastards, she would spend less time on babies and more on the real threat, Edric Storm, Maya Stone, than Nahor's baby girl. Gendry was happy polishing helmets and beating on swords with hammers. This is close to Arya's thoughts at the peach when Bella, another Robbie B bastard, offers to ring his bell. Warning Gendry is actually quite odd, if you think about it. Varys is a shady character, focused on putting fake Aegon on the crown. What does he care if Gendry lives or dies? While it helps the narrative by giving Arya a companion, it doesn't make any sense, particularly since any link between Gendry and Varys is non-existent for 5 books. Some of the dialogue between Varys and Tyrion is taken from Book 1 of the Game of Thrones. Tyrion compares himself to a little lamb. Varys says to Ned Stark that Baelish is the second most devious man in Westeros. Which means Varys is first, and Varys also says to Illyrio Mapatis the gods only know what games Littlefinger is playing. That may be true, but Tyrion and Varys should be dedicating spies to find that out, not just twiddling their thumbs. In A Storm of Swords, Sansa finally realizes, after the Purple Wedding, the extent of lying at the royal court. The irony is that her awakening comes only when it is far too late. She is being shipped off to the Eyrie and only realizes on the trip that she has been suckered by Littlefinger all along. The line, "They are all liars and everyone better than you," come from Sansa's recollection of a talk with Sandor Clegane. Sansa is now Elaine Stone, so Sandor is now wrong. GRM performs the best sleight of hand with the women. Arya transforms into a fearsome assassin while Sansa becomes Littlefinger too. Baelish's play is predicated on his knowledge that Gendry is at Harrenhal. It is never explicitly stated, but as the master of the coin, and a provider of whores and brothels, he knows the identity of the bastards. He helps in the investigation by bringing Ned Stark to see the whore and the youngest bastard girl, the one killed on her mother's teat. Baelish would have known about the older bastards. In the story, as he wanders about Harrenhal, trying to scare Catelyn on the dangers to Sansa, he sees Gendry. And the trap is fully set. There certainly could have been more dialogue for Tyrion, or between Jaime and Jon. Even Gendry could have had a bigger role. You can really spend a lot of words fleshing out their responses. But the backdrop for the battle has already taken 2 chapters. At the end of the day, Joffrey was always a little shit, quick to anger, easy to push to violence. Baelish is an excellent manipulator and in the first 3 books, the best player of the Game of Thrones. For Baelish, this is the culmination of a decade of plotting, the service to Jon Arryn, the secrets uncovered as Master of Coin, and his manipulation of the other characters. Chapter 26, The God's Eye. Chapter text. The God's Eye. The tall slender man held the golden heart spear in his right palm, his olive skin and yellow caftan blending into the dun-colored walls of the ruined throne room. He placed the left hand down, the back of the palm on the right wrist. He spun the spear clockwise, 2 revolutions between the handoffs from right to left and back again. Skip and catch. Skip and catch. The spear twirled, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, until the weapon moved in a blur and the long steel blade seemed everywhere and nowhere at once. The spear spun at an incredible speed, but the man stood undisturbed in a stable pose. His hands moved quicker than a viper, but his shoulders were entirely relaxed and no sweat dripped on his face. In his youth, Oberyn Martell studied Sujutsu, the art of the spear, with the fighting monks of Yi. He learned to thrust, swing, and strike until the weapon became an extension of his arms. He could stab with the point, slice with both edges of the long blade, and smash with a spinning shaft, hitting as hard as a flail. Through thousands of hours of practice and hundreds of fights, Oberyn mastered the 3 elements of the spear: speed, stamina, and space. The Red Viper was as quick as his namesake, He could fight or fuck for hours, and he kept his enemies at range, close enough to strike, but far enough to block, dodge, or circle. Oberyn practiced that morning in the sandship. 1,000 years ago, Mors Martell, a lesser lord of Dawn, had married Princess Nymeria here, after she burned the 10,000 ships. Before the Martells conquered Dawn, the sandship was their ancient home, an ugly squat keep, shaped like a drome and washed ashore and turned to stone. Oberyn trained in the ruins, under the leaded glass windows of the dome, one inlaid with the Martell spear in gold, and the other the blazing Roanish sun. He had gone through a dozen caters when he heard light steps on the stairs. Oberyn continued his movements, focusing on footwork, jab steps for attack, and even quicker back steps, until he flitted about in a whirlwind and ended the dance with the blade level with the face of the intruder, an olive-skinned boy with straight black hair. "Tristan, why are you not with your little lioness?" Oberyn said. He placed the spear butt down on the stone floor. "Father sent me to summon you to the Tower of the Sunday." Tristan said. "I am not surprised Doran calls. But why are you the messenger? Why not the Castellan, the Maester, or even your sworn shield? I thought you were busy wooing Myrcella in the water gardens by losing games of Sivas." Oberyn said. The boy flushed slightly. "Myrcella beats me fairly. She is very clever, uncle, and sweet and gentle. Father has sent Maester Caliot and Maester Miles to gather our entire house. Lady Elaria, your daughters, my sister Arianne. Even Rakasho, Sir Mamfrey and Lady Alice have been ordered to attend. Something important has happened, uncle." Oberyn kissed Elaria on the lips and greeted his 7 daughters. Even little Lorza was there, and his youngest girl celebrated her 6th name day only a moon ago. 3 of the sand snakes were armed openly, and the 4 others carried hidden daggers. Lorza had been given hers as a name day present. Tristan sat next to his father and sister Arianne. "Brother, why have you called us?" Oberyn addressed the grey-haired man seated in the wheeled chair. Gout and time had weakened Doran Martell, who covered his swollen and weakened legs under a gold and red blanket. A copper tray near the wheeled chair held peeled blood oranges and a silver knife. Ario Hotter, the bearded captain of the guards, stood over the prince, carrying a 2-handed longaxe. "A ship landed this morning," the captain announced to every inn, winesink, and alehouse in Sunspear that the North has sent Rhaenys' killer to Dawn. "The mountain that rides was captured?" Oberyn asked in shock. "Our spies say the mountain still accompanies Tywin Lannister. The lions, or what is left of their army, prepare for battle against the wolves," Doran said. "Then who?" Oberyn asked the question on the mind of everyone in the room. 24 Martell guards surged into the room, armed with spears and round shields wearing the gold, red, and orange of the Prince of Dawn. They escorted 6 warriors in mail and heavy furs. The leader was a boy of 10 and 2, with pale blonde hair and dark blue, almost purple eyes. He smiled and bowed deeply, the pale purple cloak swirling on the floor. He at least had sense enough not to wear fur in Dawn. "Edric, it is good to see you return to Dawn safe," Doran said. "Who are your companions, Lord Dane?" Oberyn said. "Sir Imon Huey. And these are the Foresters and the Tootles," Edric said. "Your father died 3 moons ago, Edric. You are now Lord of Starfall, and the head of House Dane," Doran said. "I am sorry to hear that news," the boy said softly. At 7, Edric was fostered at Blackhaven as a squire. Oberyn doubted the boy remembered Starfall or his father well. "Why have you returned to Dawn?" Doran said. Sir Imon yanked a rope, dragging a terrified man with a pale piggy face, and pig-like eyes. The fat man dropped to his knees, begging for the mercy that would never be granted. Edric raised his violet eyes, looking older and fiercer than his 12 name days. "This is Amory Lorque. Jon Snow, the White Wolf, captured him at Harrenhal. Lord Robb Stark, the young wolf, offered him to House Martell as a gift. He confessed to the murder of Rhaenys Targaryen." A hiss of disgust could be heard over the blubbering of the porcine prisoner. "We should take his head now," Arianne Martell said. "Not before we have found out the truth about the sack of King's Landing," Oberyn said. "Prince Oberyn, the Starks have already done so. Lorque killed Rhaenys. Gregor Clegane killed Aegon and Elia Martell. Lord Tywin Lannister ordered the royal children slain and the bodies delivered to Robert Baratheon. Lorne confessed this to Robb Stark and Jon Snow. Edric said. If he had a spear, Oberyn would have impaled the fat man. His brother held up his hands to quiet the sand snakes. Thank you, Edric. But how is it that you deliver this message? You served Lord Beric. Why do you follow House Stark? When the Starks captured us, Thoros declared Jon Snow to be Azor Ahai reborn, and the prince that was promised. Lord Beric pledged his sword to the White Wolf. Edric said. The prince that was promised. Born amidst salt and smoke, beneath a bleeding star. I know the prophecy. But does this Jon Snow claim to be a savior? Oberyn asked. Edric reddened. Actually, Snow does not believe Thoros. He was more annoyed than pleased with our vows of fealty. He would rather kill the Lannisters than fulfill any prophecy. Oberyn laughed. I like the bastard already. A prince who does not wish to be a prince. That sounds like Snow. He was skilled as any maester, but he refused to forge his links until he turned 1 and 6. The dark-skinned woman wore a yellow cloak over her green brigandine. The black hair was still short but had grown longer in the sea voyage. Sarala. You are back from the citadel. Arianne said. Sister, have you gotten tired of all that learning? Nymeria said with a mocking smile. I traveled here on the cinnamon wind because I wanted no maester to see the raven. Father, uncle, I know Jon Snow well. He was my best friend at the citadel. Sarala said. Sarala, I am delighted to see you. Oberyn embraced his fourth daughter. You and Lord Dane have many stories to tell. Let us do so over a meal. And as for this scum, lock him in the deepest dungeon. His dying will be long, and his name will be forgotten. As Oberyn expected, the snake was too much for the Northmen. Sir Aemon, Lord Gregor Forrester, his sons and henchmen, snacked on the sharp white cheese, olives and flatbread. They ate the dates cooked in honey and the stuffed grape leaves, filled with raisins, peppers, onions and mushrooms. They even stomached, with great difficulty, the sausages and shrimp, spiced with Aleppo, poblano and bird's eye peppers. But the Foresters and Tootles blanched at the grilled snake with fiery mustard sauce, covered with dragon peppers. The snake needs more venom. Arianne said, licking the sauce off her finger. The Northmen and Sir Aemon rushed out of the hall, leaving the Martells alone with Edric. Oberyn chuckled. They lasted longer than I expected. Northmen do not appreciate our cuisine. Ellaria rolled her beautiful exotic eyes. Send them a platter of cream cakes. It will soothe them. Now, Edric. Tell us the true tale. What have you seen in the Riverlands? Oberyn commanded. Wait. Arianne pointed to her brother. Should he be here? Why am I not allowed, sister? Doria and Lorza are here, and they are younger than me. Tristan said angrily. Isn't it obvious? Tristan might tell Myrcella. Do we want the Lannisters to know our thoughts? Arianne said. The youngest Martell flushed red. His father put his hand on the boy's elbow. Tristan is family, and in time, Myrcella will be too. Arianne, you have accused me of keeping secrets. Everyone in this room is curious about the war in the Riverlands. If they do not hear now, they would seek Lord Dane out. And besides, the Maesters track every raven in Sunspear. Edric began. He spoke about the Lightning Lord's death and rebirth at Mummer's Ford. He talked of the devastation in the Riverlands from fire, war, and floods, and how the Brotherhood without banners tried but failed to defend the small folk from the mountain, the goat, and the lions. Then the wolves came into the picture. Edric told of the inn at the crossroads and how Jon Snow had ambushed them there. There, Lord Beric and Thoros swore their loyalty to the White Wolf. He mentioned Robb Stark's voyage north to deal a blow to the Greyjoys at the neck. Edric finished with the march to Harrenhal and Vargo Hoat's betrayal and brutal death at the hands of prisoners. An exciting tale. But what about the battles? What of Oxcross and the Golden Tooth? Or the Bloody Trident? Doran said. Prince Doran, I only know what I heard. I would have fought at Harrenhal, but Lord Snow captured the castle without any losses. The Northmen think the young wolf cannot be beaten in the field. And that the White Wolf is a sorcerer. He took the tooth and broke the Westerlands with cunning. They claim he used magic at the Trident to hold a wall against 5 times his number with an army of wolves and ravens. Oberyn snorted. So many battles and you did not even fight in one. His oldest daughter had always been impatient, and eager for war. I don't see you fighting the Lannisters either. Sarilla sniped. Robb Stark wants an alliance with House Martell, Dornish swords and spears to fight the Lannisters. Edric said. Father, I thought we are allied with the Lannisters. Tristan said. Ah, yes. Your little princess. She has such lovely curls. Tyen said in a gentle voice. Her sisters knew better. Alliances can be made and unmade. But our spies in the capital say that the Northmen are doomed. The army of the Reach are 30,000 strong, with another 10 at King's Landing and more still at Highgarden. The talks have failed. The Roses and the Lions will besiege Harrenhal. Doran said. It would be different if Dornish spears were in the Riverlands. Oberyn groused. True, but how do our spears travel 1,000 miles? No one expected Robb Stark to crush the Lannisters. Even if we sent men today, they would not arrive at Harrenhal in a moon. The last report is that outriders of the two armies are less than 100 miles apart. Doran said. Prince Doran, Jon Snow asked if House Martell wants to avenge your sister and her children. Edric said. The room erupted in anger, and Oberyn felt shame that the Northmen had done more to hurt the Lions than Elia's family. We have waited years for revenge. We should strike now. The Lions are weak. The Lannister army has lost 4 battles in a row. Arianne hissed. That does not mean they will lose the 5th. The alliance with Highgarden has brought 40,000 swords to the Iron Throne. The North have less than 20,000, and many of those are Rivermen, and they are quarrelsome and unreliable. I do not play the Game of Thrones to lose. Doran said firmly. You do not play the game at all. The wolves are fighting, the lions are fighting. Even the fat flower of Highgarden is fighting. And what are the Dornish doing? Nothing. We are eating. Nymeria Sand said. I will not spill Dornish blood for no reason. House Stark is badly outnumbered. Mace Tyrell is a fool but his lords are not. The lions are still in the field. Balon Greyjoy still hates the north. The wolves must retreat, or they will fall in the Riverlands. Doran said. Jon Snow won't retreat, uncle. Sarilla said. Not with his sister at King's Landing. You will regret not allying with House Stark. They will fight. What do you think of him? Oberyn asked. I met him 2 years ago. He was just a boy then, only 10 and 3, one of the youngest students. He has a thirst for knowledge unmatched in the Citadel. He is loyal to his friends, and loves his family dearly. And he is good at war. Sarilla said. But the Northmen face an army twice their size. Surely the Starks will see reason. Doran said. He is a Snow, not a Stark, and he will not agree to your reason. At the Citadel, he was happy to defy the Archmaesters. Why will he fear the Reach? Sarilla said. Do you think he will win? That he is this promised prince? Oberyn said. I do not know about prophecies, but I believe in Jon Snow. I asked him to run away with me to Dorne. Sarilla said. Won't he be surprised when he discovers that you are not a man? Nymeria said. He knows that I am a woman. He deduced it a year ago and kept my secret. I told him that he would be welcome in Dorne and that my sisters would like him. Sarilla said. Are you not afraid that we will steal him away from you? Tyen smiled. You can try. He may be too much for you. Sarilla said to the smirks of the older sand snakes. He is only a boy of 16 name days. Arianne said. You like to play at games, Arianne. Do not play against him. Jon Snow is a dangerous opponent, and deadlier than he seems. Be glad that he is not our enemy. Sarilla said. If the matter wasn't so serious, Jon would have laughed. Arya stood ramrod straight, like everyone in the room, cowed by Robb's stern face. He looked every bit the Lord of Winterfell, like Ned Stark dispensing justice to his bannermen. Arya was not the subject of Robb's ire. Where are your men? Rob said. He glared at the nervous riverman. My lord, I am sure this is just a misunderstanding. Sir Stephen said. Jon Snow shook his head. Their horses are gone, and they took a large quantity of supplies, enough for 3 weeks. Their squires also left in the middle of the night. A se'night after the talks failed between the Reach and House Stark, the phrase had slowly vanished from Harrenhal. It had been a slight trickle at first, but last night hundreds had gone missing, including most of Walder Frey's true-born sons. Sir Stephen, Sir Pewin and Oliver remained, and surprisingly most of the bastards. I heard talk that Black Walder wishes to be married. Martin Rivers said. Perhaps he will return after a wedding at the Twins. Black Walder enjoys bedding his brother's wives too much to marry. Pewin said. How many of your men are missing? Rob asked. A long silence passed before Stephen answered. 1,500, Lord Stark. Perhaps more. My son Sir Ryman, and his sons. Many of my brothers as well. Most of the knights and horse. See to it that no more men go missing. Rob said, dismissing the phrase. They scurried out of the room, eyes downcast from the irritated Northmen. Such treachery must be punished. Roose Bolton said. We should hang a few Freys as examples. Or their bannermen. There are 3 minor houses pledged to the Twins. Kill men who stayed to punish those who left. That will lead to more deserters, and weaken our army further. Jon said. The Free cunts are shit at fighting. Good riddance, I say. The great Jon said. The Umbers were proud and fierce, but not patient planners. Sir Ryman may have been a sot and a craven, but the other knights and men at arms fought well at the Whispering Wood and Oxcross. We can ill afford to lose men. My lords, make certain your forces do not desert. The Outriders report that the Tyrells are past the Black Water. Rob said. Our men think you plan to leave Harrenhal. We are outnumbered, Lord Stark. Would it not be better to fight behind the castle walls? Roose Bolton murmured. Harrenhal is the largest castle in Westeros, but to be trapped behind the walls in a siege would be hard. We would have to send away our horses, for lack of fodder. Disease and hunger would weaken our forces. Rob said. It might weaken the Tyrells as well. Maintaining an army of 30,000 plus men will not be easy in the Riverlands. Lord Bolton said. Tywin Lannister could feed his army, but he had to pillage most of the nearby lands to do so. And the Reach is the most fertile region of Westeros. They are used to sending supplies up the Rose Road. Jon said. Prepare your men to move out. The battle will come soon enough. Rob said. The Northern Lords nodded and left, leaving only the Starks and Jon Snow. How many men do we truly have, Jon? Rob asked after the room cleared. We had 15,000 men. We lost half the Freys, but we gained 1,000 Mormonts and 700 Valymen. That brings us to the same numbers. But fresh recruits have joined us. Small folk, men training on the pikes, ex-septons, and former deserters. Several thousands, but many raw and inexperienced. And the others brigands or half-crazed. Jon said. I saw many with rainbow stripes on their cloaks and sword belts. They all have a crystal sword on their shields. Some even have a 7-pointed star branded on them. Arya said. The warriors' sons. Men dedicated to the faith of the Seven and angry at the Lannisters for destroying the septs. Jon said. Rob shook his head. Can we trust these recruits in battle? The Blackfish says these are broken men, who have suffered too much. They cannot withstand a strong charge. Most men break under a charge. If 1,000 knights of the Reach attack at a full gallop, we would have to pray to the old gods that the footmen would hold. And our new pikesmen have only used their weapons for only a moon's time. Jon said. What are you two talking about? Arya asked her brothers. Rob flattened out the map of the Riverlands and placed down a few tokens of different colors. Arya, there are 3 basic groups of soldiers. Archers, horsemen, and infantry. Forget the archers for now, and just think of horse and foot. With the Vale, we have over 6,000 horse, 9,000 foot, and 4,000 new recruits. The recruits would fight with the infantry. Our cavalry is well tested. We defeated the Lannisters at the Whispering Wood and broke the siege at Riverrun. Jon took half the northern cavalry west, while the infantry was in the Riverlands. At the last battle, near the Trident, I led the cavalry against Lord Tywin's reserve and won, while Jon held the Trident. But that is good, right? That the knights and mounted fighters have fought well. Arya said. Yes, but it means the infantry has not been blooded. It took nearly 3 weeks for Lord Bolton and Lord Karstark to march the foot soldiers down to Riverrun. And Jon used the cavalry to attack Oxcross. The infantry has seen only one battle, and even then, most of the hard fighting was done at the wall or by the horsemen. Robb said. Robb is worried about how the foot soldiers will fare. The Reach has thousands and thousands of armored lancemen. Knights charging at full speed would be frightening even for experienced veterans. For the Brotherhood without banners or small folk, Jon said, they would be cut to pieces. It might be better to leave them behind. Robb said. No, we need as many men possible. We are already badly outnumbered. I will find a use for them on the battlefield. Jon said. Then you will take charge of them? Robb asked. Jon nodded and his brother grimaced before leaving the room. Robb is angry, Arya said after their brother departed. The room was empty now, except for the map lying on a table. Not at us. He is upset about the phrase. Do you know what is the most important thing for an army? Jon said. Numbers. Strength. Skill in battle. Arya said. Jon shook his head. No, it is discipline. An army without discipline will fall apart in any difficulty. By leaving, the phrase have hurt Robb's ability to command. That is far more important than 1,500 men. Fighting in a war is not like dueling in the yard. So not just sticking them with the pointy end. Arya said. Jon laughed. Not quite. He made 2 rows of coins on the map. 2 armies face each other in 2 lines. Imagine I break through the enemy line. Jon pushed 1 coin through the line. What happens? Arya thought. Well, you would be ahead of our forces. They would attack you on 3 sides. Jon nodded. And that is why in battle, men are rewarded for their bravery. It is dangerous to fight at the front. But look more closely. What happens to our enemies? If they move to strike you, they would also be vulnerable. They could be attacked from the front and side. Arya realized. Breaking through the enemy line is dangerous. But once you do so, they feel great pressure to retreat. Jon pushed more coins though at different spots. The first one who runs might survive. But those who are trapped when their line breaks, they die. Arya said. Most battles are about holding the line. Often 2 lines crash into each other, hoping to force the other side to give way. You have to be brave, because when the lines break, and people run, the battle is often lost. More men die fleeing than they do fighting. Jon said. But Jon, how will you stop that? Arya said. We cannot. The Tyrell Knights will charge and our line will break. But we can change what happens afterwards. Jon said. No one in King's Landing was better guarded than Sansa Stark, Tyrion thought. The girl had 3 sets of escorts, although they might be better described as her jailers. Bronn and his hired killers walked behind them, the sellsword's gloved hands on his longsword and dirk. Sir Loras Tyrell stood at her side, chatting vapidly about his sister's visits of mercy to Flea Bottom. The Knight of Flowers dressed in the white of the Kingsguard, with the only colour a brooch wrought in the shape of the rose of Highgarden, soft yellow gold in a bed of delicate jade green leaves. The final guard was the most dangerous, stomping ahead in his soot dark grey plate armour. Sandor Clegane wore the white cloak but most saw only the left side of his face, a burned ruin of scars. The Hound was one of the few men that Bronn feared to fight. Sandor Clegane was a few inches shorter than the Mountain but he was quicker and just as savage. The door opened to 2 giant guards, 7 foot tall, in gilded half-helms and golden armour with the rose of Highgarden sewn on their breasts. A dozen women were seated about a trestle table. Sweet-smelling rushes were scattered on the floor and a few bowls of rose water lay on the table, along with knitting. Tyrion did not recognize many of the women. He had only been introduced to Lord Mace's elegant wife, Lady Ailary. The cousins and companions blurred together, although the status of Lady Margaery and the wizened old woman with the future queen was clear to all. The matriarch of the Tyrell family stared at him with unfriendly eyes. "You were not invited, Lord Tyrion. We are here to sup as ladies, and I do not believe you qualify," Olenna said. "I am here to ensure Lady Sansa's safe return," Tyrion said, holding back a more caustic response. "As Hand of the King, I intend that no harm comes to her." "Do you really believe we would harm my new lady-in-waiting?" Margaery said. "No, but I need her returned to the Tower of the Hand," Tyrion said. "Ah yes," Olenna said, glaring at Tyrion. "The poor child is the Iron Throne's hostage against the North. Have you no shame holding her while you war against her brothers?" Tyrion refrained from calling the Queen of Thorns a hypocritical bitch. Her brothers refused to accept King Joffrey's rule. Perhaps the Tyrells can instruct them on the meaning of loyalty. Olenna ignored the quip and reached gaunt spotted fingers for Sansa's hand. Her sour breath contrasted with the sweet rose water. "Poor child, do you know what they say about you?" Dutifully, Sansa bowed to Olenna and gave a deeper curtsy to Lady Margaery. "I do not, my lady. I have not seen any news or had any visitors for some time. They say you are the reason your brothers refused to leave the Riverlands. The singers call you the Princess of Love and War, and the Lady of 10,000 Knights. That is the number of the Knights of the Reach that will battle the North in your name," Olenna said. "I am no princess," Sansa said. "I will be loyal to her grace, Queen Margaery." One of the Tyrell cousins, a fat and florid girl, clapped her hands. "How romantic! To be admired by so many brave men, like the songs and stories of old." Sansa flushed. "I do not wish to be fought over by anyone or have anyone die for me in songs. Whether it is Northman, Riverman, or Reachman. I only wish to serve." "Quite right. Don't listen to Megha. She is one of the more foolish of this flock of hens, and that is saying quite a lot." Olenna shook her head at the Tyrell cousin in question. "Come, eat with us. Lord Tyrion can stay outside and dine on some salt fish and cold bread." "Sansa, you must be hungry," the friendly Lady Ailary said. "We have boar roasted in red wine and blackberries, a broth of leeks and mushrooms, and lemon cakes. Have them bring a plate of cheese. Or I will starve to death," Olenna said. The Queen of Thorns motioned to her guards, and the two 7-footers ushered Tyrion, Bronn and the other escorts to a small alcove. The Tyrell ladies could still be seen but were too far to be heard. A wooden tray of brown bread baked with beer was plopped down on a table, with 2 small dishes of butter and blackberry jam. Tyrion frowned. They had forgotten the salt fish. Sansa Stark searched for words under the curious eyes of the ladies. There were 3 cousins her age, one the chastened but smiling Megha. There were a few married ladies, Lady Ailary who seemed kind. She guessed the others were Fossoes and Rowans, but she had no idea of their names. The Queen of Thorns cleared her throat and Sansa rushed to fill the silence. "I am saddened to hear of Lord Renly's death, Your Grace. He was gallant," she said. Olenna snorted before Margaery could respond. "He was a traitor. Renly had no real claim to the throne. Stannis is the elder and Robert has 2 sons. Even if these stories about Cersei and the Kingslayer acting like Targaryens are true, Robert Baratheon had many other natural sons. Your brothers have a Baratheon bastard at Harrenhal, some byproduct of the king and a tavern wench, and he is older than Joffrey," Olenna said. "I was not aware of that, my lady. I had thought the Lannisters planned to trade me for Sir Jaime," Sansa stammered. She wondered why the Tyrells summoned her. The Lannisters would if they had more sense. If my son wasn't a dolt eager to please, he would force the exchange. But boys like to beat their little swords on shields and boast about knocking each other off horses. A bunch of fools, who should listen to their mothers. Are your brothers like that as well? Do they enjoy whacking each other with sticks?" Olenna said. "They spar and they train. Or they did. Jon was sent to the Citadel 4 years ago. Robb is a good sword, and a better lance. But he doesn't speak about his skills. The North does not have tourneys, my lady. My father did not think war was a game. When he fought a man, He did so to kill, not boast. Sangza said. Your father was a sensible man. A terrible hand but a good ruler for the north. Olenna said. Is your brother Rob like him? Or does he favor his Tully side? I am not certain what you mean. Sangza said, slightly confused. My grandmother wants to know if they have ambitions in the south. With this Gendry Waters as their puppet, they could put a claim for the Iron Throne. Even in King's Landing, many doubt Joffrey's parentage. He looks very little like a stag. Margaery added. A few moons ago, Sansa would have defended Joffrey as too beautiful to hate, but she knew better now. My brothers are not hungry for power. They are honorable men. They take after my father, Lord Stark. They will do what is right, and not for baser reasons. Your brothers. What about the bastard? Robb Stark is the Lord of Winterfell. But your half-brother Jon Snow has no lands. Might he not want to fight to gain a title? Olenna said. Sansa shook her head. Jon is more Stark than anyone. He and Robb are very close, and Jon's loyalty cannot be questioned. Robb has always wanted to give Jon lands near Winterfell. Margaery smiled brightly. I hope when all this unpleasantness is over, that we can be friends. As queen, I would like relations with the north to be good. Pardon, your grace. I thought the Tyrell army was marching to fight my brothers. Sansa said. My brother, Sir Garland, believes that the bloodshed can be minimized. Margaery said. My son Mace has given orders to encircle the northern army at Harrenhal. No one wants a long and costly siege. If everyone stays sensible, an honorable surrender can be reached. Lord Robb may have to give hostages, but Joffrey will be disappointed. That boy is far too eager for blood. Garland has no desire to give him your brothers' heads. Olenna said. The leek and mushroom broth came, along with fresh oat bread, baked with bits of dates, apples and oranges. A tray of cheese and lemon cakes followed. Your Grace, I pray for peace. Robb and Jon have no anger against the Reach. The only head they want belongs to Joffrey, not your brother. Sansa said to Margaery. The horses were saddled and mules and drays ready to pull the loaded supply wagons. At the edge of the lake, Jon gave a few last orders to Maturin Marndaly and the captains of the other riverboats. They would launch from Harroway and stay close to the western shore. That morning, Robb had spoken to both the cavalry and the infantry about the plans to march south. Jon would do the same for the recruits that were being gathered by the Wintertown boys. He looked over the motley bunch. Half a dozen outlaws with mismatched armor, sour faces, and few teeth stood with the Lightning Lord. These were the leaders of the Brotherhood, and not just the rank and file. Septons and begging brothers rubbed shoulders with soldiers pledged to the faith. Captains of the pike companies sat on the grass, the long spears jutting high into the air. The pikesmen took Jon's instructions to become familiar with their weapons literally. Peasants, eager for glory, milled about with their crude axes, sickles, and hammers, as did drummer boys who had blended in with the crowd. Sir Raymond Mallory and a few other knights looked uneasy at the other attendees. Jon could understand their reservations. The new recruits did not inspire much confidence. Arya, Chet, Jerry and Gendry stood behind him. We march south from Harrenhal today to fight the invaders. If there is anyone who wishes to stay behind, say so now. Jon said. Milord. Why would we not follow you? Jack Bilucky was a loyal man to Dondarrion. He had only one eye, and the other was covered by a dirty brown bandana. He wore a rusty pot helm and carried an equally decrepit billhook. The Reach has 30,000 men. It will be a tough fight, and you must be ready for a hard struggle. Jon said. A muscled soldier shoved his way to the front. Lord Snow, we are not afraid of these knights. We will gladly die for the Riverlands, and under the banner of the Wolves. And that is where you are wrong. In war, the goal is not to die for your liege lord. The goal is to let your enemies die for theirs. My men will live to fight another day. Let the knights of the Reach sacrifice themselves for glory. We will win. Jon waited for the cheering to die down. But to do that, do you remember what I asked before we marched on Harrenhal? You said to follow your orders or hang. Sir Raymond said. Aye. If you come with me, you had best listen. When I tell you to march, you will march. When I say stop, you will hold. Every man here will heed my orders, or you are no use to me at all. Jon said. Is that clear? When I give commands, you must obey. But how will we know? On the battlefield, we cannot see you. Listen to your captains, and the drummer boys. Their notes will tell you what to do. Make no mistake, if you wish to stay alive, obey me on the field. Otherwise you will look like him. Jon pointed to the Lightning Lord, blind in one eye and battered with many wounds. And the Red God will not save you. The recruits renewed their vows of loyalty, and chanted White Wolf with gusto. He was amazed at their boldness. Then again, he had been eager for war once too. Quite a speech, Snow. Jory said, grabbing his elbow. Stark wants to see you. The Mormont girl was with Eddard Karstark and Smalljan Umber. Any particular reason? Jon asked. Final orders, I think. We are ready to march, Snow. Smalljan said. Time to take it to the Southron cunts who smell like flowers. They smell a lot better than you, Umber. Eddard japed. Jory stopped Jon with a hand on his chest. Snow, Robb says that you are going to be at the center of the fight. That like the Red Fork, he has given you an important task. Yes, I will command the new recruits. Otherwise they are not likely to make it out alive. I am sure the Reach Knights will charge and we will have to face them. Jon said. The Mormonts will join you. We have the best armor in the Northern Army. My sisters, Daisy and Lyra, ride with Robb in the cavalry, but I will fight at your side. Jory said firmly. As will we. Eddard said while the Smalljan nodded. Harryon and Torren are mounted, but I promised to defend your life. And the Smalljan hates to miss any real fights. It will be dangerous. My speech to the recruits aside, I do not know how many of us will survive. A charge by 1,000 knights can be deadly. Jon said. Bah, I am the boldest of all the Mormonts. On Bear Island, my name is Danger. Jory scoffed. Your name is Jory. And I think your 4 sisters would all claim that title. But I would welcome allies. There is great risk though. This battle will be hard. Jon said. Jory shrugged. I would rather die fighting with you than in the winter cold. I want to face the enemy and have them sing songs about the courage of the she-bears. Let them fear the North. Let them know what 1,000 howling Mormonts can do in war. Let them see that death comes at the end of my morning star. Her dark eyes glittered in the morning light. He nodded and clasped Jory's hand in his. No one could say that Jory Mormont lacked fire. She was a true lady of the North and in her way, sweet as any Southron lass. If the war ended now, he would enjoy his stay on Bear Island. Jon and Arya made their way to the gatehouse. The Kingslayer was secured for transport in a prison wagon, singing a jaunty tune, 6 maids in a pool, a song about Florian the Fool and Jonquil the Maiden in the Age of Heroes. Tully and Stark guards glared, but Sir Jaime only whistled back. They might never be friends, but Jon admired the confidence of the Lannister knight and his armor of insolence. They walked past Robb's guard, and entered into a room with only Robb, Talisa and the Tullys. Robb, there must be some other way. Lady Stark said. Perhaps a parley. Or send a message to the Tyrells. They may be able to convince the throne to give up Sansa. The Tyrells failed before. Sir Garland made promises that he did not keep. Robb said. Sir Garland is not Lord Mace. Either he or Lady Olenna may have more influence at King's Landing. Catelyn said. Mother, the die is already cast. Our scouts have spotted their outriders. The main army of the Reach has marched north of Stony September. They are less than 100 miles away. Robb said. If you lose, the Lannisters will pursue us north. It won't just be your head, but Bran, Rickon and Arya. And we will never see Sansa again, she warned. We may be outnumbered, but that does not mean we will lose. I have seen the army of the Reach. Jon and I have a strategy to defeat them. Robb said. They outnumber you 2 to 1. There is no shame in bending the knee. The Lannisters want the Kingslayer released. If we do that and there is no more war, Sansa may be released one day. Let us give Lord Tywin peace in return for mercy. Catelyn said. I do not want war, mother, but the throne refused to return Sangza, after agreeing to a trade. That is not justice. The Reach believes they cannot be defeated. Let us see how they fare in battle, and not boasts or tourneys. Robb said. Lady Stark stomped away, with a downcast Edmure and an apologetic Brindon in her wake. Mother is in a fine mood, today. Arya said. She is worried about all of us, not just Sangza. I am sending her back to Riverrun with the Kingslayer. Robb said. What about Lord Edmure? What about the Freys? Jon said. I cannot spare any men now. I have neither the time nor desire to bargain with Lord Frey. Robb said. Are you going to punish the Freys for deserting? Arya asked. Robb can't punish Lord Walder. The Freys are sworn to house Tully. It was Lord Edmure that Walder insulted. Jon said to his confused sister. Arya, Sir Ryman and his sons are cravens. They would not have betrayed the Tullys without Walder Frey's approval. Walder Frey will deny it, of course. He is a disgusting old man, but he has no lack of cunning. If the Tyrells and Lannisters win, he can claim that he held half his troops back and strike a better deal with the throne. If we win, Sir Stephen and Perwyn will be fighting for us. Either way, the Freys come out on top. Robb said. That is not cunning. That is deceitful. Arya said. It is both, sister. Jon said. It is Edmure's right and obligation to punish the Freys, but the Tullys have only a small army. Without his bannermen, he would be outnumbered in any conflict with Lord Walder. Robb said. Robb can send Stark men to support Edmure, but we need every sword and spear for the coming battle. Jon said. Robb nodded his head. We are ready now. I will ride the cavalry down. Jon will take the infantry on a forced march. The boats have been dispatched. We will move swiftly south. You don't plan to wait at all? Arya said. I have seen the Tyrell army in motion. They move slowly. So we will move quickly. They expect time to set up their forces. We will not give that to them. We will march and force them to react. The battle will occur where we choose. Robb said. And where is that? Arya said. Robb pointed to a place on the map, 30 leagues to the south, on the shores of the Great Lake. The God's Eye. That is where we will fight the Tyrells. The bells rang in the Tyrell camp early that morning. Sir Garland rushed out of the tent with his shield and sword. To his squire's dismay, he only wore a mail coif about the head and gauntlets and vambraces to protect his forearms. Sir Garland preferred no armor rather than hastily fitted pieces that would be far more cumbersome than full plate. He looked about cautiously. There were no dire wolves present, or fires burning. The Starks might have attacked, but any damage was not great. Sir Garland met with other leaders in the central pavilion. Sir Adam Marbrand and the giant Gregor Clegane represented Lord Twying, but the leaders were predominantly Reachman, Hightower, Fossoe, Crane, Oakert, and Merryweather. Lord Randil Tarley was in charge of both armies, and he was barking orders to his two unfortunate sons. Sir Garland commanded a large force of Tyrell cavalry, but the strongest bannerman was Sir Baelor Hightower. Sir Baelor, what was the attack this morning? Garland asked the handsome heir of Old Town. They think it was the Blackfish. He raided with 100 men, and destroyed several supply wagons before retreating. Baelor said. These attacks are only flies biting at our heels. Vance and Piper men attacked my spears yesterday and we repelled them without a single loss. Orton Merryweather said. It is true. When my knights came to help, they had already fled. Sir Parman Crane said. These Northmen seem poorly equipped to fight against the Reach. Lord Oakert observed. You have not fought the Northmen. Sir Adam Marbrand said. Those raiders are rivermen. The Blackfish may be a seasoned warrior, but he is not a Stark. They are much more devious, and will attack where we least expect. That is why we will strike first. Lord Tarley raised his hand, clutching a note in a meaty hand. Garland realized that the fat son named Samwell had just handed a short missive to Tarley. Do you have news, Lord Randil? Marbrand asked. We have a spy in the northern camp. They have already marched 50 miles down from Harrenhal on the western shore of the lake. Tarley said. The wolves have won battles through trickery. At the Whispering Wood, they lured Jaime Lannister into an ambush. They broke the siege at Riverrun by attacking in the early morning. They attacked Oxcross with surprise. They took the Golden Tooth with treachery. And they built defenses and traps on the other side of the Trident. These tricks won't work on us. Why not? Does your spy know what they intend? Marbrand said. Tarly shook his head dismissively. The battle plan is simple enough. We have 40,000 men, twice their number. Our knights and foot soldiers will break through the center of the northern lines, and overpower the two halves. After the infantry is defeated, we can chase their cavalry away. There will be no ambushes, no surprise tactics. We will attack on flat ground where our charge will destroy their forces. Are you not worried about northern cunning? John Fossoe asked. 5,000 men dead would be a heavy loss for the Reach. For the north, 5,000 dead would be a disaster. We can afford to wear them down, and when they are broken into smaller groups, they will be easy to flank. The north does not have enough men. And that will be their downfall. Tarly said. We have heard that the north has more men. That knights from the Vale and the Lightning Lord have joined them. The Brotherhood without banners now fight for the Starks. And Septons and other men pledged to the faith. Adam Marbrand said. Tarly scoffed. A few hundred men here or there. Bandits, deserters, small folk. And who cares about these self-proclaimed sparrows? When have kings and high lords ever had to dance to the twittering of sparrows? The Reachman in the tent applauded Lord Tarly for his bold plan of attack. Sir Adam Marbrand seemed less convinced, and the freakishly large Gregor Clegane had no expression on his ugly and surly face. Garland had spent 2 days with Jon Snow at Riverrun. He was more familiar with Robb Stark, but Snow struck him as nobody's fool. On the way to the Riverlands, Owen warned Garland that his friend was clever as a fox. Tarly expected the Starks to fall to the combined Lannister and Tyrell army, and saw Jon Snow and Robb Stark as two green boys who would break before an experienced commander. Hadn't Lord Tywine made that same mistake? House Tarlis Sigil was a huntsman with a bow. Hornhill's words were first in battle. But the Starks were wolves. Who would win between a hunter and a pack of dire wolves? Jon Snow woke up to the loud snoring of Jorah Mormont. She drooled a bit in her sleep, her crooked teeth and winsome smile visible under the furs. She was no fair maiden, actually Jorah was no maiden at all, but she was eager and unburdened. When Jon worried about battle and the looming threat of death, she laughed. The stranger comes when he comes, she said, but before we die, we must live. She pinned him down with heavy teats, calloused hands and thick thighs. At least, she had not threatened to use her morning star. Jon smiled at the slumbering she-bear. Starks had made happy marriages with Mormonts in the past. But you are not a wolf, the voices whispered. You are the blood of a dragon. And dragons do not plant trees. No, they did not, his namesake least of all. Prince Daemon preferred to play at war than be a devoted paramour. His first marriage simply lacked any affection. The later 2 marriages were bloodier affairs. Lady Lena died in childbirth, trying to birth a son. Rhaenyra might have been beautiful once, but she was petulant, proud, and grasping, hardly a good foundation for marriage. War was easier than love. The rogue prince was good at war, and so was Jon. He left the tent and breathed in the cool morning air. There was no wind and the sun was low in the sky over the God's Eye. Besides the guards on night patrol, only a few squires and boys had woken. Jon opened a cage and a raven took wing flying west. He sat and waited, until the bird reached the enemy camp. The Tyrells had deliberately kept to flat, open land, to avoid any ambushes. For the last 20 miles, they would march east to meet the northern army, camped on the western shore of the God's Eye. There were 2 obvious ways of attack. The Reach could use their superior numbers and widen the line, beyond the point a smaller force could match. Then they could attack the wings, and try to envelop the northern army. There were 2 problems with that approach. First, the wings would be vulnerable to harrying from Robb's experienced cavalry. Second, the lake protected their back. It would be bloody and costly, but the north had a strong defensive position. The Tyrells were less than 10 miles away. John saw through the raven's eyes a huge host of tent and thousands of horses. There were a few banners for the Westermen but dozens for the Reach. The Reachmen had not widened the line, in fact, they had formed large narrow columns, with less frontage, but great depth. The entire army was spread over less than a mile and densely packed. There was light cavalry and infantry on the wings, to shield the massive central attack force, rows of spears and swords and most importantly, the knights with lances. Lord Tarley meant to cut through the northern infantry with one brutal charge, a flying wedge that would penetrate deeply and break the enemy formation. Lord Randall knew his history. That was what the blacks had done at the God's Eye, forcing the greens into the water to drown. How far are they? Rob's voice broke into John's thoughts. Less than 10 miles. They mean to attack our center. Tarley knows our infantry will break. No doubt Lord Bolton told him. Or spies for the Lions or Roses. Rob said. We will be ready. John said simply. The two brothers sat in silence, thinking of the battle to come. What of the engagements in the last few days? The Blackfish, Mark Piper, Cale Vance and Martin Rivers have been raiding but they retreat immediately. No casualties on our side. Rob said. John nodded. The Mummer's farce would make the Reachmen overconfident. Southron knights and lords enjoyed boasts and such skirmishes would give them ample fuel. Yesterday, the Blackfish harassed some water bearers who wandered outside their main camp. So the horses will not have enough water, at least for a day. Rob said. They will not die of thirst but any advantage, no matter how small, is good. John said. Do you think Tarley attacks this morning? Rob said. Most likely, he waits until Bolton tells him our plans. The Liege Lord is cunning and we do not know how he sends messages. If his messenger is fast, the Reach will attack today. If not, tomorrow. They think it is easy to put us to flight. John said. Your plan is dangerous. More so even than the Red Fork. Rob sighed. John shrugged. We cannot ask others to fight if we are not willing to lead. Time to fight or die. Rob said. Or perhaps both, John thought. Northmen and Riverlords were crammed tight into Rob's tent. Dried meat, dried fish and bread were laid out on the table along with a crude map. Rob added to the lines on the parchment for the lake with circles on the north and south for the short hills, overlooking the valley. The cavalry will be placed in these two spots. The Blackfish and Sir Martin will lead the Rivermen on our left wing. I will hold the right wing with the Gratian, Carstarks and Umbers. Sir Robar and the Valiman will ride with me. Rob turned to Roose Bolton. My lord, I would give you a place of great importance. You will hold the very front. Bolton's pale cold eyes gazed at both brothers. John wiped any emotions from his face. I appreciate the confidence but where will the other forces be deployed? John stepped forward, and marked several spots on the map for a mixture of units. They were behind and either to the left or right, forming two diagonals, with the Bolton men were at the peak. Next came the Dustins and Riswells. Interspersed in the crescent were pikesmen and mixed forces. The Mormonts held the flanks. After he finished marking the inverted V, John spoke. This is an echelon formation. Lord Bolton's men will face the Tyrells. Our new recruits will be behind him, as will the Glovers, the Mandaelis, and the mountain clans. The center will be extremely thin. Roose Bolton said in a soft whisper. We have no choice, our formation must be flexible to offset the advantage they have in men. If they attempt to attack your sides and flanks, then other units can reinforce you. John said. Do you not think you can hold the front, Lord Bolton? Rob asked. I accept the honor of the position. I intend to repay you for your trust. Roose said. But where do you plan to be, Maester Snow? I will be behind you, my lord, closer to the shore. After all, I am no fighter. John said. Lord Stark, the scouts report that the enemy host is enormous. That there are dozens and dozens of the banners. Might they have received reinforcements? The Red Fort Knight asked. Rob smiled. Sir Michael, who are the best knights in the 7 kingdoms? The Knights of the Vale, my lord. The young man said with certainty. And we have the knights. They may have numbers, but the Reach does not have Sir Michael Redfort. Our strength and speed will win the day, Robb said. Sir Michael blushed from the praise and laughter spread through the ranks of the Northmen. Jon admired Robb's easy leadership. Of course, they did not have the Knights of the Vale. They had less than 1,000 Valarmen. If they had 20,000 additional warriors, their tactics would be very different. Robb would be at the gates of King's Landing. Jon left the tent with Arya after instructing the Riverlords and Northmen on their place in the formation. Many commanders, including the Lightning Lord and Jory, had left to rally their troops. Arya looked at her brother nervously. She had never been seen battle before. "Jon, do you have any special orders today?" Arya asked. "Yes, don't get killed," he said before turning serious. "It will take time to deploy our troops. Even then, we do not know when they will attack. Eat, drink and rest. And bring me the drummer boys. They will play an important role. We will need them to play loudly in the battle. Very loudly. Roose Bolton says he will repay us for our trust. He will regret those words." Moving quickly for the Tyrell army still took many hours. The sun was high in the sky when they sighted the northern banners. Sir Garland had wanted to lead the Tyrell Lannister army, but he bit back any angry words. Randil Tarly had taken the centre, and next to the Lord of Horn Hill, Sir Adam Marbrand and Gregor Clegane stood. Garland had been isolated to the wings. He understood why. His men were primarily light cavalry, armed with javelins, swords and shields, and better for reconnaissance and patrol. Garland's men would fend off any attacks by Northmen on the flanks. At the very front of the army, 2 rows of light infantry had been placed to hide the formidable ranks of knights and heavily armed footmen. He was positioned on the center right, with an excellent view of the battlefield, far better than Randil Tarly on the front line. Garland was shocked at the enemy formation. For one, the Stark banner, the running dire wolf, could barely be seen. The banner in the front was an upside-down flayed man on a cross. The hands, feet and head were white while the rest of the body was bloody red, the skin stripped off. He could see the Tully and Riverman banners to his right and the Stark banner to the left, clumped with several others, in a throng of mounted men. But it was the infantry that was more surprising. The foot had advanced beyond their horses on the 2 sides, forming a crescent with the Bolton banner central to the half-circle. The center looked quite thin, and the troops that Garland could see were a mix of different units, warriors with mermaid helmets, hairy mountain fighters with armored burnies and great 2-handed swords, devout knights with rainbow tassels and crystals on their greedhelms, and poorly equipped small folk in boiled leather. There were pockets of pikes jutting toward the sky but not readied for defense. Garland wondered why Lord Tarly had not already charged a charge. On the wings, the horsemen battled. Tully and Blackwood men attacked on the periphery, but that battle seemed half-hearted, with no one getting an upper hand. On the other flank, the Stark banner remained in place, but other cavalrymen charged hard, slamming into a band of Westerman scouts. The Reachman infantry barely reacted, too focused on keeping their column intact. The Lannister light horsemen were driven from the field easily. The battle, after all, would be determined in the center. Garland and his men were ready to advance. Then he saw why Tarly had been so confident. The grim sign of the hanged man turned away and the Reach could only see the black cloth, and not the bloody skinless body. The Bolton forces spun around, first the men nearest to the Reach army, but then the ranks further away, until they faced east toward the water. Confusion reigned in the front ranks, as the cohorts nearest, one bearing a black horse head, and the other 2 long crossed axes, still faced west. House Bolton had betrayed the Starks. The charge had not been ordered because Lord Tarly intended the Boltons to attack as the vanguard. Garland wondered who had known of this treachery. Randil Tarly, of course. The Lannister men, Clegane and Marbrand, must have too. That explained their presence at the front. Garland did not like such knavery and deceit, but he could do nothing now. The Northmen began to give ground as the Boltons attacked their unsuspecting allies. Into this chaos, the Tyrell Lannister army charged, the banner of the flayed man leading the way. As the northern line broke, knights and footmen rushed into the breach, certain of victory. Jon Snow reacted as soon as the banner turned. He motioned to Big Liddle, who took out a war horn longer than his head, carved from an Oroka's horn, and banded with bronze. The eldest son of the clan chief of House Liddle was a mountain of a man with a voice like thunder. He lifted the great horn and blew a long and low blast that carried far and wide, through the entire valley. Eddard Karstark and Smalljan immediately called to their men, and Jory barked an order to the Mormonts to assemble. The Winter Town boys, already mounted on ponies, took off to call on the drummer boys. "John, the Boltons have started to attack," Arya said. On the field, soldiers wearing the flayed man struck down confused Riswell and Dustin forces. John had placed the two houses closest to see if they would also betray the North. They had not, and that would cost them their lives. The blood that Roose Bolton shed with those two houses clearly did not matter a whit. The drumming began, a slow but steady beat. It was uneven at first, but then the small folk boys managed to follow the beat, and the crack of drums could be heard over the field. Lord Beric and his brotherhood, Sir Raymond Mallory, the Faith Militant, small folk, Marndalis, Glovers, Liddles, Flints, Burleys and Vulls, all of them began to retreat, first a slow walk, then an orderly pace, and lastly, a swift trot backwards. For a full moon, the pikesmen practiced only two movements, and today they executed the second flawlessly. The bulging crescent vanished and then reversed, as the northern infantry formed into a tighter semicircle. This time, the central position was held by Mormonts, and Karstark and Umber infantry guarded the flanks. Along the mile of the backward-bending crescent, the Wintertown boys dismounted, waving the banner of the White Wolf at 6 points. The infantry marched to the sigils, and the first to arrive were the pikesmen. They stopped and turned, and the new formation took shape. John had sacrificed the lives of House Dustin and Riswell, but that was only a few hundred men. At Highgarden, Sir Garland drilled often against 3 or 4 combatants, trying his best to simulate war. Nothing could prepare him for the smell and sound of a real battle. Thousands of men and horses stank, and that before the fighting began. He had heard men shat themselves when they died. He had not expected them to do so before even fighting. Green boys, nervous despite their bragging, fouled their breeches, and the battlefield already smelled like shit. Sir Garland was too far to smell the blood and guts of the men butchered by the Boltons, but he could hear their screams of surprise and shrieks of pain. Unlike the songs, few men died cleanly in war. Wounded men took a long time to die. Look at the Northmen running for their lives. Orton Merryweather whooped. The Reach men anxiously waited for their chance to advance. Some rushed ahead despite their orders. "We had best attack soon, else we will be too late for any glory," Lord Oakert said. "I will take the White Wolf's banner as a prize," a knight boasted as he began his charge. Then Sir Garland heard the drummers beating in a slow rhythm. Boom! 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 The noise had been hidden in the thunder of hooves and howls of dying men. Was the North sounding a retreat? He saw the banners far away, near the copper waters of the lake. There were many of them, a white wolf on dark field, waving proudly in the air. Something did not make sense. The northern center was breaking under pressure. Lannister cavalry and Lord Tarly charged ahead to bolster the Bolton attack, and men from the Reach poured into the breach. But at the left and right hills, the Northmen and the Rivermen had not retreated. Sir Brynden Tully remained with the Rivermen. On the other side, the banner of House Stark, a grey wolf on white, stood still. Garland knew that Robb Stark and Jon Snow were close. If one was threatened, the other would come to the rescue. And yet, even as the northern infantry fell back, the cavalry had not reacted. Why would they not move? The horses stayed still for a long while as the battle raged, and the Reach chased the overmatched infantry further. Finally, at long last, the enemy cavalry began to move. Sir Garland's eyes widened in shock. Robb Stark was not retreating. He was advancing, and so were the Rivermen under the Blackfish. Something was terribly wrong. The semicircle had solidified into a mass of pikes and spears. Along the crescent, companies of pikesmen had lowered their weapons, the long spears giving cover for the other northern forces to reassemble. Jon was at the center of the new line with Jory and the Mormont foot soldiers. Behind him, Nymeria and Ghost waited silently, guarding Arya. Behind her, Gendry and the other Wintertown boys were mounted, in case he needed a messenger. Jon glanced back at the lake, looking for the riverboats. Then he remembered the words of Leaf on the Isle of Faces. Water magic. Use the water against your enemies. There was power in blood, and he was the blood of the dragon. John turned to the water. The Isle of Faces was the last bastion of magic where the weirwood trees grew stronger and stranger. Why did they grow there? Was it merely a reserve for the children, or did the Green Seers choose the Isle for a reason? John had read the legends of the children and listened to the Citadel argue that those were only tall tales. Archmaester Cassander claimed the arm of dawn formed from hot summers and short winters on the shivering sea, not the hammer of the waters, and that the swamps of the Neck existed long before the Andal invasion. But what did an Archmaester really know? John reached for the water. He let his mind sink deep into the God's Eye. The lake stretched forever, a sheet of sun-hammered blue. Something lay underneath the surface, strange, alien and dark. Blue eyes that burned bright, blue blood that did not bleed, and pale skin whiter than the moon on a clear night. The cold struck John, bitter cold, that numbed the mind and froze the skin. The cold rose and spread, and birds fled, and fish shivered. The color drained from the God's Eye, the warm water sucked down to the depths, and the lake began to swirl. John pushed further. Fierce waves roiled the God's Eye, slamming into the shore, the crests riding high. The sky turned grey, as the very air was pulled down by the lake. Pulled into the cold depths, by the magic of the God's Eye. John realized what would happen next. The wind came, a powerful strong breeze that blew from the lake, whipping the air into a frenzy. The wind howled, blowing over the lake. Blowing west into the faces of the enemy. Jory, Arya, Jerry. John yelled and pointed to the sky. Dust, we need dust. Jory was the first to understand him. She slammed her spear into the dirt, and a small cloud of dust went up. Jory gaped as the grey dust billowed in the field, caught by the fierce wind. Mormonts. What are our words? Jory cried to her men. Here we stand. The fighters in full plate armor, greedhelms and steel shields cried back. The she-bear stamped her steel boots, and thumped the butt of her spear on dirt. 1,000 Mormonts did the same, and the huge cloud of dust blew directly into the Tyrell Lannister army. Other North and Rivermen began to mirror the Mormonts, and more clouds of dust rose. The wind continued to blow, throwing the grit and dirt into enemy eyes. He turned away, breaking the link with the God's Eye. The lake held magic and mystery, but he had no time now. As the warmth returned to his blood, John hefted his spear and waited to meet the enemy. Behind him, the air howled and the sky turned grey and ashen. He was ready for the battle. At the back, Sir Garland tried to understand what was happening. The surge of knights, spearmen, and swordsmen should have swept away the weak enemy line. Victory seemed inevitable as the Reach charged into the center, led by treacherous Boltons. But the powerful onslaught lost its momentum, and the advance slowed and then ceased altogether. Men still continued to pour in from the back, and knights and foot soldiers were crammed together, in their eagerness to see battle. The drumming stopped. The northern infantry had regathered under Jon Snow's banner. The long spears that had been pointed harmlessly into the sky now faced forward. Squares of pikes controlled the battlefield, soldiers crouching down to brace the butt of the pike in between their feet. A forest of spearheads bristled at chest level for the horses, and formed two diagonal lines, forcing the Tyrell army inward toward the center of the northern line. The air was full of the groans of the wounded, the sound of blows to flesh or armor, the mingled shouting of the confident and the terrified. And over it all, a wind blew, a cold devil wind from the lake, whipping dirt and earth into men's eyes. From the edge, Sir Garland could barely see through the torrent of dust. The conditions in the center must have been far worse. Sir Garland. His gangly squire, Alan Ambrose, yelled. We are under attack. Sir Garland pivoted to the right, ready to take on the Blackfish. The Riverman scouts pushed forward but were still contained by the Oakhurts and the Cranes. Sir, sir. Alan screamed in fear. Not that way, the other side. The young wolf. Sir Garland had positioned himself on the center right. The Stark banner had been to the far left. If Robb Stark was here, that meant the cavalry guarding the Tyrell left flank must be dead or dying. Sir Garland tried to wheel his men around desperately to meet the attack. He saw Lord Umber's giant in chains and the Karstark's white son, but it was a mounted Robb Stark and the monstrous wolf running at full speed that led them. On the wings, Stark's companions threw a barrage of javelins, killing men and horses alike. Alan fell hard to the ground as his horse was slain. If there were more time, Sir Gawain might have sounded the horn for retreat. But it was too late. The Reach had fully committed themselves to the battle. "They are coming," Jon said. Time had lost all meaning in the clamor and chaos of the battle. It felt like hours, but he knew it had not taken long for the flayed men to cross the field. Jon hefted a spear and picked up his shield. If he died today, let him die, defeating his enemies. "Gods, there are lots of them," Eddard Karstark said. The Bolton men outnumbered the center of the line 2-1. And behind the Bolton